Huh. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Inconsequential Gaming. So, today I'm going to be giving my first official review on the 1.4.0 point 2 update. And I feel like, personally, uh, anything less than like a 4-hour review of this video game is an injustice. I mean, how can I put it? This update is immaculate. Like, if Terraria was rated a 1 out of 10, I'm sorry, let me say that again. If Terraria was ever rated a 10 out of 10 game, right? But let's say that you gave it a 1 out of 10. These new additions make that game a 10 out of 10. But imagine if you already thought that Terraria was a 10 out of 10 game. What's the rating now? It I'm speechless. I'm not really speechless, but I mean, I can't freestyle this. So without any further ado, let's do this review. Like, there's a lot to talk about. As I said, it's gonna take 4 hours. I'll try to cut it, but it's gonna be pretty close to 4 hours because there's a lot to cover. So let's let's get to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So it's exactly as I said. This is gonna be a long one. So I suggest grab yourself a snack, grab some lunch, grab something nice and cold to drink, maybe something warm like some hot tea or some hot cocoa if that's your jam, because this is gonna take a while, right? And I want to make sure you're nice and relaxed. So yes, I highly suggest you do that. Sit back, relax. The real life version of you, your Terraria avatar, because you can sit back and relax. But yes, either way that you want to do it, I just recommend you sit back and relax, um, and let's go. So to stay on track, because there's a lot to discuss here, I actually have a very long list, and it's going to be divided into parts, and so is this video. So if you want to skip to any of the parts, or skip ahead because there's a specific topic that you want to hear about, you'll be able to do that. But this is the very beginning intro. So before I start discussing anything at length, I want to first introduce everyone to the list of subjects that we're going to be discussing in this video today. Okay, so in the first part of this video, I want to discuss the idea of veteran players like myself being super eager to skip right to the fun part, right? Now, it's not that Terraria, Vanilla Terraria 1.3.5 wasn't fun. It's just that if you were to rate early game and hard mode, and let's say that you were to divide them in half, early game would be about like a solid 8, maybe 8.5. And then hard mode would be more in the fun factor side of about a 10 out of 10. So it's one of those things where, yes, the entirety of the game was always very fun. It's just that one part was just extremely better to play than another. So it's one of those things where it's just like a lot of players like myself had the tendency to try to introduce hard mode features into early game, which, you know, Terraria allows because it's a sandbox game. But it's one of those things where if you're a new player, those things are pretty much locked off to you. You don't get to experience those unless you're lucky enough to have a friend who, you know, has already beaten the game, I would say, or has a lot of items in the game, or is pretty far along in the game, or you're on a server. But either way, it was kind of messed up that you know, a lot of the fun parts were locked behind hard mode. So we're gonna discuss that, yes, in this review, and then we're gonna discuss other things. But that's one topic that I do want to cover, in addition to the nerfing of the notorious Reaver Shark weapon. Well, pickaxe / weapon. Now, that's a whole different discussion. We'll go into more detail, but that's one of the topics that I want to cover today in this review. Now, in the second part of this video, I want to discuss journey mode in 1.4.0.2, how amazing it is, and as biased as I may sound, right, I can explain to you in detail exactly why journey mode, like just in general, is just so brilliant. It is such an amazing way to play, I would say, nearly any game, but especially in Terraria, where there's so many different things you can do. There's so many different ways you can play this game. Oh, well, this existed before the updates, right? You could easily play with someone else on a map and do completely different, separate things, and both could be just as engaging, right? But journey mode is almost like, wow, I wouldn't even say it's the opposite. It's like two players, right, can have the exact same desire to want to do the exact same things, right? But one player, like myself, who likes more of a challenge and to likes precision and, you know, likes to feel the thrill of combat, right? Where I could be subdued at any moment, right? Where another person, you know, they might want to steamroll enemies and they might want a more powerful feeling character experience, right? You can actually do that in the new update. You can have the exact same goals and desires, but a completely different experience at the same time somehow. This really needs to be discussed in much more detail, but I just wanted to give a brief idea of what it is that I want to discuss, and like how I really feel like it's not a biased opinion about journey mode. Like, it's really that good. I feel like it's almost undeniable. You know what I mean? As biased as it may sound, I really feel it's an undeniable fact of how good that addition is to this game. So for the third part of this video, I want to discuss at length a list of things that I was expecting, including some surprises. Now, the reason I feel this is important to discuss is because a lot of the things that I wanted for Terraria, on a personal note, were very specific. I didn't really expect the game to be this grandiose masterpiece. You know, it's already a masterpiece in my opinion, but I mean, I didn't expect them to. Well, we'll discuss it, but I'll just say it's important because the things that I actually wanted had nothing to do with being grandiose. It was more so like little tweaks here and there to kind of tighten the game up. I already felt as though it was somewhat a complete game. It just needed to be more polished. But of course, not only did they polish it, but they added flowers, decorations, you know. And then an extensive list of the things that I didn't quite expect, that really surprised me, and I also felt were great additions. Because, you know, when you've been playing a game for so long, it becomes a part of you in a really odd way. and you can kind of feel entitled with this idea that you know what's best for the game, when really what's best for the game can be something that you've never considered. So I feel as though that's something that I really want to discuss at length, because there's a lot of additions to the game that I don't feel as though I needed to be there at the time. But now that they're here, I'm glad they're here, and I don't know if I could live without them. You know what I mean? Like, they're such great additions that it's like it's part of the game now. And if you were to take it away, you would feel it. You know what I mean? For part 4 of this video, I want to discuss a little bit. I want to try to make it kind of brief, but it could go longer, but I don't think a whole lot needs to be said, but I think it still needs to be said, right? So my incentive to create these epic structures, kind of like what you're seeing now, right, isn't nearly as strong. Like, I felt like when Terraria was still in its 1.3.5 stages, and when it was going to go to 1.3.6, I really felt as though, you know, the game was going to improve in like the little areas, but because I wasn't expecting what it is that we have now, like this grandiose, like everyone is here type thing, like just give them everything. Like, I wasn't expecting that. You know, that's not common from a developer. There's reasons. I won't get into it because I want to keep it brief. But what I'm saying is, I still will build structures that are pretty grand and huge to still show off what Terraria can do. But it's going to be in a different spirit, because I kind of feel like what you see with 1.4.0 is just a truly complete package, and any extra sauce you want to add on top is just that extra thing you can do. Like, for example, I thought something like Terraria Golf, you know, it wasn't needed, but there you go. I was thinking to myself, there you go, Relogic. That's how you get the most mileage out of your game. Take advantage of the fact that the game allows people to be creative. Like, golf is the perfect mini game. You know, yes, like, do add golf. You know what I mean? It's sort of like I was kind of pushing, like, yes, now you're starting to see what your game really is. You know, so structures like this were in that same vein, where it's just like I was trying to, you know, push the idea that this game is more. Like, I understand when you first start, you're just on this barren map. Not barren, you know, but it's just trees and dirt. You know, it's much more. You know, it's not a Minecraft clone. Like, and it was such a shame, because I could easily understand how someone could make that mistake, because I feel like and you know, I'm gonna do a hot take. I feel like for the first slice of like 10, if I was to divide this game into 10 sections, I feel like the very first slice of that 10 sections, the developers, this is a hot take, really dropped the ball, because Terraria starts to really ramp up, but it's sort of like one of those really good shows that has a crappy first or second episode, and even though people should tune in because it gets better, it's sort of like you kind of lose people, you know, if you don't grab their attention right away. So, you know, that was kind of me overcompensating for the fact that, like, a lot of people probably will never get past that one slice. And so it's completely not needed. Like, the game sells itself. So I want to discuss that probably briefly, because really, like, just in this preface, I probably covered exactly what it is that I want to say. But just in case, I'll just kind of go over it briefly again. So in part 5 of this video, I want to also discuss how I was so sure before 1.4.0 came out that I just knew which aspects I was going to like the most. Nobody would have been able to tell me differently. I just knew for a fact my favorite thing was going to be sitting in chairs, interacting with furniture, and just using the food items and really engaging with the social aspects that the game was going to add, because my interest had already I already decided that my interests were things like these grandiose structures that show what Terraria is capable of, and my idea was I was just going to I would say improve on that by, you know, not only just making really nice living spaces, but taking advantage of the fact that now you can sit, you know, you can use emotes, you can talk, you can use it as a nice lobby, you know. Terraria was going to be a nice little lobby game, right? Because I had already done it all, seen it all, etc., right? Come to find out, though, that wasn't the case at all. Some of my favorite things in this game are things that I just didn't expect, like exploring. Now, don't get me wrong, exploring in Terraria has always been pretty fun. It's just that it's more than fun now. It's an experience. You have to experience it. Like, if you do not take the time out to explore this game thoroughly, you are doing yourself a serious disservice. So in part 6 of this video, I want to discuss my experience with the game, right? It was almost like a revelation, right? Where I just kind of sat back and I said, you know what? Let me just see what the game wants to do, right? This time, let me just let go of the wheel and just let the wind take me wherever it wants me to follow. And I was pleasantly surprised, because from my viewpoint, Terraria was always a make your own fun kind of game, which would explain, you know what I mean, my idea of why it is I felt I needed to create these grand structures and really show off all of the really good stuff as quickly as possible. It's just like, as soon as you jump in my world, it's just like, look, it's this huge mansion with like 50 rooms in it, and look at all these pretty decorations and plants and pots and paintings and this grand ivory piano, and, you know, just try to stuff as much, you know, content in there as possible so that so you can really drill it in to another person's mind that, look at this game, like, this is just a small slice, but look at how, you know, textured this slice is. Like, there's more to be had here, but you gotta see it right away type thing, right? And I was expecting, you know, the updates were gonna fill in those little gaps, right? But I was not expecting the game itself. As soon as you touch ground, right, before you cut down your first tree, right, I wasn't expecting the game to have the same idea, where it's sort of like, let's hit them with everything we have from the very beginning. I did not see that coming. And so, yeah, Terraria, in my opinion, is no longer a make your own fun game. You don't have to create a space, you know, to make Terraria enjoyable or to enjoy what it has to offer. Like, it does it from the very beginning. And wow, I didn't see that curveball coming. Like, I'm so used to a lot of things honestly just being locked behind obscurity or some sort of difficulty spike. It's just, I really just didn't expect them to have the same, idea, different, their own original take on what it is this game really is, but just, it's almost in the same spirit. You know what I mean? Like, let's give them everything. And I didn't see that coming, so I definitely want to talk about that in length. Another topic that I just feel I really need to talk about are a lot of the new systems that I like. I like the fact that they exist. It's nice that they're here. But to be honest, with my new playthrough that I've been doing, I don't even use them. But the thing is they're really good. But it just goes to show that you don't, like, the game isn't depending on these new additions to carry it. They're there if you want to use them. They're probably very useful. You can probably get some really cool stuff by doing it. But do you have to do it? No, not really. You can have a good time and completely ignore these features. But that goes to show that this game, which it already did have, but it has even more replay value, right? Now, depending on how powerful some of these new additions are to, or their contributions to how a person wants to play in a certain way, they may be more inclined to use certain things. But me, for the most part, I'm kind of looking forward to touching those things later. For example, the thing with the pylons, that's cool and everything, but I've got to the point where I really like exploring, and going from place to place by foot is my jam right now. So pylons, I mean, I guess, but I'm not actively seeking them out, but I am glad that they exist, because I might want to change things up later on. Terraria Golf, again, another excellent addition. I thought that I would dive into Terraria Golf with both feet first, probably being one of my most anticipated features. And yes, it's definitely great, but maybe later, not quite yet, Master mode, again, I think maybe that's something for later. Like, once I feel as though, the standard difficulty of an expert challenge is not enough anymore, maybe I'll hop into master mode. I don't really have anything to prove. It's just like, I feel like, well, for me, Terraria has always been a really internal and personal experience, and I've only recently just started being part of the community, to be honest. So it's one of those things where I'll get around to it. This game has legs. It'll be fine. Master mode will be waiting for me when I'm good and ready. I don't need to see everything immediately. Like, that's not how I consume Terraria. Like, if Terraria wants to show me something now, I'm open to it. If something, I want a more organic experience this time. I don't want to try to force feed the greatness of this game. It's one of those things, like, now the game just says, hey, these things exist, use them if you want to use them, but you don't need them, because the game is great with or without them. But the fact that they're here makes it even better. Definitely need to talk about that. Another thing that I feel I really need to discuss is just the overall game performance as a whole. The polish, not just like the visual polish, but just the way the game feels to play. It just feels better. It feels less clunky. Menus load faster, things like that. It's just, you can feel the polish everywhere. Like, everything got a nice shiny new polish. And they fixed some really obscure things, which is why I really want to talk about it, because I personally use a hybrid of a keyboard and mouse plus controller, and there was an issue where I feel like the two were I guess in their own realm, and there was like sort of like this invisible wall that blocked off one from the other. So for a perfect example, and there were many other issues that were fixed, but I'll give a perfect example. So if I was to open a container, for example, with the controller, for some reason it would lock me out of being able to close the menu with the keyboard or mouse. Like, you had to choose one or the other. If you decided to do an action with the controller, the keyboard and mouse side just stopped responding, and then it was sort of like vice versa. And then it wasn't always true sometimes, so it was just really convoluted and weird. But I'm glad that they fixed that. But just overall, just bug fixes. Like, there's still the crashing. Like, I haven't had any issues with crashing. It's just, you can feel the polish goes just beyond visuals. Like, this game just feels better to play and feels better to exist in. Just really great. So I really need to discuss that too. Now, as I said earlier, exploring is my new jam in 1.4.0. I was never a super fan of exploring in Terraria, right? Like, it had its moments, but it was kind of just a thing I did, to get the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta go here to get the stuff so you can make the thing, so you can fight the boss. Like, it was just it was the step you had to do, right? And all games do that. But it was particularly very grindy in Terraria because, it's not really the fault of the game. Well, it wasn't at the time, because it was meant to be a sandbox game, and none of the worlds were meant to be as good as each other. Like, everything was random. But it could get to a point where you weren't really finding good stuff, and it just kind of felt like a grind, What I'll say is that it was always fun, right? But repetition, all things with repetition eventually have an expiration date. It's always a certain point where you're like, I like, spelunking and everything, but I'm not finding anything. Like, all these caves are starting to look the same, and there's much more fun things you can be doing in hard mode, like invasions and stuff like that. It's one of those things where it was just a circumstance of the times, like, no one game figured this out. It was a grind probably in every game. Like, dungeon crawling in games eventually has an expiration date, right? However, 1.4.0 did something really interesting. Even if you go exploring, like I love doing now, and you find nothing, right? What I love is how the nothing you find is still useful, because it goes towards something else. Now, I don't want to spoil exactly what it is that I mean by that, but just know that when you find something that is not particularly great, it's still useful, and it can be used for something later on. So it's not a complete waste of time. But on top of that, aside from the reward system being improved greatly, right? Just exploring, period, is just so much more immersive. I can get lost in those caverns. I can get lost in the wilderness. Just the liveliness and the scenery and the new critters and the wind effects and the way the water splashes and like the retextures, like everything is just so much more lively, and the surroundings can consume you to the point to where, and this is me speaking, right? And this is important. I'm gonna qualify this, right? I have to take, before the 1.4.0 update, I had to take Terraria in very small doses when it came to doing the adventuring portion, right? When it came to just doing social stuff, oh, I could stay on this game forever. Like, just looking out the window, having my character sit there and watching the sunrise and stuff, right? But exploring now, I'll look up, and the next thing you know, it's already been 6 hours. And it only felt like about 30 minutes. That is how immersive this game has become. And it's all the little details that I won't get into just now. And it's probably not even worth saying. It's like, I could tell you, you need to play this game so you can understand what it is that I mean. You need to play this to understand. So just know that the immersion of this game has reached the levels of something like Skyrim with all the good mods turned on. You know, vanilla Skyrim's good, you know, don't mind, it has its issues, but with the mods, like, imagine the shortcomings of Skyrim, right, being addressed to the very finest minute detail, right, fine-tuned. That's what 1.4.0 feels like. And lastly, just for fun, I want to revisit an old spoiler tier list that I posted in the Discord chat, rating the all of the Terraria reveals. I think the list went all the way up to about 20. Yeah, but it was like a list of 20 or so plus things, you know, that were considered like really cool, I guess, or just in the spoiler tier list. Just, you know, just for fun. Well, the reason that I want to revisit it is because my opinion has changed. The tier list has changed dramatically. I actually, on the tier list, you'll be able to see it much later. I actually have a snapshot of it. But the tier list actually had journey mode, I think somewhere in like fifth or sixth place, when it should have been number 1. At least in my opinion. That's crazy. And it's a few other things that change spots. Like, I'm usually pretty comfortable with saying that, oh, well, yeah, my tier list, you know, I got maybe 2 things wrong, so it's still pretty close. No, it's a lot of stuff's wrong on here. Like, I'm gonna need to fix that. But yeah, just for fun, I want to review that list as more of a state of the game address, but not really, because I still have a lot more to learn about this game. So it's not an official state of the game address. I'll do that much later. I want to beat the game, you know, see what it is that the game wants to show me that's new, what old things have been improved, things like that. And then I'll feel more comfortable doing something like that. But without any further ado, those are all of the things that I want to cover in this video today. So let's get started. Now, like I said before, if I'm being 100% honest, a lot of the really fun stuff about Terraria is locked behind some difficulty spike or hard mode. Like, a lot of the, I don't know, like, fun, so I would say fun is subjective, right? But it's sort of like, some things are like really engaging, right? Like combat, enemy variety, what enemies can do, what kind of spells and stuff you can get, right? So I'll give you a perfect example of a difficulty spike where several fun things are locked behind. They're locked behind this difficulty spike, right? Now, one of the more fun spells, in my opinion, in this game is called Water Bolt. Water Bolt has always been a really cool spell, because of its ability to bounce off walls in sort of like a ping pong fashion. So if you shoot it, all you need is about one. I think it would rebound off walls for up to about 2 to 3 times. And it was really fun to use because if you found a little rhythm or an arena that had walls, the same projectile you shot off could probably hit an enemy 3, 4 times. And it's sort of like you don't get Water Bolt super early, unless you're really lucky. But in all honesty, it's really locked behind Skeletron in the dungeon. And Skeletron isn't a late game boss. He's really early game, but I would say he's arguably the fourth boss you encounter, the third or fourth. And by that time, you have to include all of the spelunking you've done, all the terrain that you've covered. You probably explored underground to find some goodies. It's sort of like the things that are locked behind him, for example, are of course the Water Bolt, some of the things that the clothier sells, like some of the vanity items that look really cool. One thing a lot of people enjoy, especially myself, at least from what I've seen, is the familiar pieces. For example, a lot of the early game armors aren't really that flattering, so a lot of times to take the sting out of how ridiculous they look, having a familiar wig will allow you to basically get the bonus set of having on the armor, but you can still see your character's face. So just things like that. The alchemy table is locked behind the dungeon, which is also a Skeletron lock. I think maybe you can get a bewitching table as well. I think it's very rare, but I think you can get one. But of course you have to get past Skeletron first. The dungeon itself is one of the more fun parts of the game, where the enemies, there's variety. There's like traps, not like boulder traps, but like actual like swinging maces and this little fire wheel that goes across platforms and stuff, like a Mario game. It's a lot of fun in there. You get exposed to water candles, which are your early version of battle potions, which increase enemy spawns, which I believe in early game isn't a desirable effect, but it still makes things, intense. So usually, if it's a little much for you, you want to grab the water candles so that you can reduce the spawn rates. It's usually like some kind of strategy behind that, but it's just like, that's just kind of an example of what I mean. And that's one of the reasons why you have something notorious like the item called the Reaver Shark. Now, the Reaver Shark was an early game, very fun piece of equipment that allows you to skip all of that annoying stuff I just talked about. Like, you could start getting to the cool parts of the game almost right away. And it was kind of divisive. Like, the Terraria community is not as bad as some other communities I've been a part of. It's still very divisive. It's divisive in almost a laughable way. Like, no one's really going to battle over the Reaver Shark. It's just like, it's one of the very few divisive pieces of equipment in the game, where some people really believe it should get nerfed and some people think it's fine as is. I was one of the people who thought it was fine because I really didn't think that early game would get this much of an overhaul. Basically, like, now early game is what hard mode was. Slightly better, I would say. Hard mode in vanilla Terraria before the updates 1.3.5, right? From 1.3.5 on, early game was kind of like not. It was okay. It wasn't. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. It's just that it was no hard mode. So now in 1.4.0, I would say early game is just as fun as hard mode was in 1.3.5, but I would say marginally better, like just by maybe 3 ticks. At least from what I've experienced, it might be even better than that. But just from what I've experienced, it's just as fun as hard mode used to be in 1.3.5. But because they kind of just throw stuff at you. It's just like, here, have this and that. So my opinion was, if Reaver Shark is going to either be nerfed or its drop rate is going to be drastically decreased, like, please make it worth our time, because I would say, at least in my opinion, Reaver Shark was desirable because it allowed you to get to the good stuff faster. But if they want to stop that, like they want it to be in balance, more in line with the rest of the in-game features, I totally agree with that. I'll just say that if you're going to do that, then don't don't make me suffer through the not as fun parts of the game when I know hard mode is waiting for me on the other side. But now I know, now that I've actually played 1.4.0, that it is fun. So I can totally understand them nerfing Reaver Shark. I didn't agree with it at the time of hearing that it was nerfed, but I do now. Like, to be honest, it's kind of inconsequential to me. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, now that it's nerfed, okay. Like, I don't really think anybody's gonna care. Like, even the avid like Reaver Shark lovers like myself, like, I don't care. Like, the only reason I really liked it was because it allowed me to skip the early mode grindy parts. So, and now that early mode is just as fun as hard mode used to be in 1.3.5, like, I don't care about Reaver Shark being nerfed. Like, if that's what you want to do, fine, redigit, like, have your way. I'm glad to experience the game that you want to offer me. So that's just one thing I wanted to address, but that's not an issue anymore. Like, early game, as I said, is just as fun as hard mode used to be. So I don't know. I'm indifferent about Reaver Shark. I don't even really care at this point. So it's much like I said earlier, adventuring is my new favorite thing in 1.4.0. Like, I absolutely adore it. There are several unique experiences that I've had doing adventuring in this game that, man, like, they were very special. And I think also I was in a good position because I stopped myself from consuming too many spoilers at a certain point. Like, when I started learning about certain information, right? I started to realize, okay, I should probably stop looking at spoilers now, because I think I'm getting into the territory of where I'm gonna ruin the surprises for myself, right? And I'm glad I did that, because I was pleasantly surprised in several really great instances, doing multiplayer and doing adventuring. And I've done multiplayer and I've done adventuring in Terraria, and it wasn't in 1.3.5. It kind of was, but it started in 1.3.4 and started to kind of fall apart in 1.3.5. More so because we kind of, it wasn't like a tragic story or anything. It's just like we all kind of started separating and doing our own thing, and then other games were coming out. So it's just one of those things where even with all of those experiences that I've had with multiplayer in Terraria, nothing, and as exciting as it was, because I always tell this story about how I was brought into this game in a very peculiar way. So I have a very deep attachment with like this game, and I see it through a very unique lens. All that said, that does not compare to the experiences that I've had in this update. It's just so special. The little details, it's almost kind of difficult to say in words. It's almost like a feeling, like it's a whole mood. Like it's sort of like what I like to do. You know, I'm really surprised that the vision that I had for what this game could be and the vision that the developers had were similar in a lot of ways. Not identical, but similar. But admittedly, their vision for this game was just much more bright and clear and had a lot more ingredients. Like I think maybe my cynicism didn't allow me to believe that this game could reach levels of an abandoned project that super fans got to take over, and let's say they were focused enough to say, okay, let's realistically make this game better. We can be ambitious, but let's actually have ambitions that we can accomplish. And I always compare it, like I said, to Skyrim with all the good immersion mods turned on. Like, it's just that good. I actually got to see what they did with the ocean biome by accident, and it was a great experience. And I had just the right tools to get the best possible experience in that area, something that I've been wanting in this game for a long time. And I won't spoil what it is for anyone else, but just know it was such a delight. Journey mode is amazing. Okay, so let me talk about the impossible. So if you don't already know, I'm one of those hardcore Terraria players or video game players who likes a challenge. I like my games difficult. I like them to demand a certain amount of attention from me. I want them to force me to sharpen my skills, my hand and eye coordination. Challenge me, make me think. Allow me to be creative about how I approach a situation. Don't let every situation be about, you have to do this very specific way. Give me the room for creativity, but yes, challenge me. That's the type of player I am. And I know that it's very difficult to play a casual game. Not to say that Terraria is casual, but when I say casual game, I mean just play a casual experience together. It's nothing, no pressure, nothing to prove. Just like, let's just have fun. And it's very hard to do that with the average person, and there's always a conflict there where someone's needs are not being met a lot of times. Not saying it's impossible, but a lot of times one person's probably having much more fun than the other because your goals are somewhat different. In journey mode, though, you can play exactly how you want, exactly the way you want, but also with someone else who's doing the exact same thing. And that's just absolutely brilliant. I can't even explain how they came up with such a brilliant idea, because I believe this is a very original thing. Like, if this exists in other media, I would love to know who was the first to break ground with something so amazing, because I didn't even think of something like this. Like, this game is for everyone, literally. Like, the person I was playing with isn't a person who likes the same things as me. Like, they don't like the risk of like a boss. If a boss kills them 3 times in a row, they don't get a fire. They probably would get discouraged. Like, oh, this boss is, I don't like this. Me, I'm the type of person to be like, oh, I'm gonna get my revenge. We can play together and both enjoy the game equally, if not one more than the other, but only slightly, but still be fully engaged and not have to compromise in not one bit. And that's what Journey Mode is. And I applaud the developers for thinking of such a brilliant idea, because I couldn't even conceive the idea of playing with another person, seriously. Like, I'm actually seriously playing. Like, I'm engaged fully because I'm playing exactly how I like. Very difficult enemies, heart-pounding situations. But the person who's playing with me, they're playing the way that they want to play, and they don't like that. But we're coexisting. It's just brilliant, and I know it probably sounds confusing and impossible, but it's very possible. Like, this Journey Mode is almost like a thing that's too good to be true, but it actually exists. It's too good to be true, but it's here. 1.4.0 is a real thing. All right, so now I want to get into 2 very separate categories. So first I want to talk about the things that I was expecting, and then after that I want to discuss the things that I was not expecting at all and that caught me by total surprise. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is my expectations for this game had a very standard formula and then a very obscure formula, right? Because I play this game in a very odd way, right? So it's easy to assume, at least from my perspective, that I would probably go overlooked in this update. And I didn't mind it so much because the way that I play video games isn't very popular. So it's one of those things like, how could the developers possibly know, to add this or that thing or to tweak this or that thing if like only maybe 50 people who play this game do it, So I went in thinking that, okay, they're going to cover the obvious bases. The graphics are going to be better. They're going to optimize the system. They're going to add cool new items. They're going to improve early game. All of the very obvious things that, Terraria could use an improvement in, right? But that wasn't the case at all. They actually went above and beyond, and I guess perhaps maybe, and it's like I said before, that the developers were thinking about the game in the same way people like me were, where it's just like, this game can be more, like, not just more stuff to do though, but more ways to engage. So let me get into the things that I was expecting, just in case like that might sound really obscure, right? So one of the things is, of course, for the game to look and feel better to play. But I was thinking just the way it controls, right? I thought the controls would be less clunky. They would be more responsive. I wasn't expecting the adjustment to controllers and keyboard and mouse hybrid users, where like now it's seamlessly functional. Like, I didn't expect that, but I did expect them to tighten up the controls. But again, they surprised me and went above and beyond. But I was expecting that. The feel, though, I was just, thinking about gameplay, but like the way it feels to play this game is an experience. It's very immersive. And that surprised me, but I knew it would look and feel better to play. But I did want to emphasize that when I say feel, I just kind of meant generally in like responsiveness. But I wasn't expecting the way it feels to play this game to also be in an immersive perspective. So that was quite the surprise there. Then I was expecting cool new items and then recipes to craft, obviously. But I wasn't expecting a cooking system. Like, it's very simplistic, but I like how there's tiers to it. And I won't get into it for anyone who, wants to mess around with that. Like, there's some really cool stuff that you can do. So I won't talk too much about it. But yes, I did not see that coming, but that was pretty fun. So the parts of the game that were lacking, of course, but they went above and beyond with that, and I won't get into that. But wow, they really knocked it out of the park. Of course, newer blocks and devices that address, other issues. But again, they went above and beyond in ways that I wasn't expecting. Early game items to mirror the more hard mode items, and the reason I say that is because I had a suspicion that a lot of the cool factor that hard mode had would obviously translate into early game, because I started noticing that with other updates. Like, for example, one of my favorite items is the Blizzard Staff, which is a hard mode item. You get it much later. And then in the update, there was a comparison to it called a Meteor Staff. It's very similar in a lot of ways, but obviously weaker, not as fast, not as barragey, if that makes any sense. But it was an equivalent, the same way that I would compare the Crimson Rod to the Nimbus Rod. It's one of those things where it was starting to do this whole one-to-one comparison where some things were a natural upgrade. But it's sort of like it was kind of unfair because all the cool stuff was hidden behind hard mode. But nowadays you can start kind of developing your character. Like, this is how I want my character to be as early as possible. And you don't have to wait anymore. Like, that's really cool. But, I was expecting them to do that because they've done it before. And in golf to be just as good as I assumed it would be. That Terraria golf, I pretty much got right on the nose. It was exactly what I was expecting. So I'm very glad because, obviously Terraria golf, like, come on, you see I make mini games. I have a mini game called Boulder Ball. Like, come on, like, golf, obviously. You know what I mean? Okay, so here's the list of things that I was not expecting at all. I was not expecting the vanilla game casual runs to be better and more fun than my challenge runs. I do challenge runs in Terraria to keep me engaged because early game can be a drag. So I try to spice it up, by adding my own rules and stuff. But now, like, I will probably still do that stuff in the future, but now it's just fun to play. Like, I don't care about challenges or anything. Like, if I want a challenge, just crank the difficulty up a little higher. Like, I don't need to do all of this extra stuff to try to distract myself from the grindiness of early game because it's gone now. Like, there is no more grindiness. I absolutely love it. I was not expecting the game to feel like a living, breathing world on the level that it does, because Terraria's world was always immersive to me, but it never felt alive. Like, and it's something that I'd never even considered, right? I like the critters. That's one of my favorite things. And I like that people who like the critters like myself were taken into consideration with this update, with something I won't spoil, but they paid attention to the smallest details, right? And I like the critters, but I used to do things like capture frogs, and then at the nighttime make like a little frog nest and then throw them in there just so I can hear them ribbit at night, because they don't normally spawn in the overworld. They're more so jungle exclusive critters, but I like the atmosphere that they add. But now we have owls, and we have I think crickets rarely do the little chirping thing that they do, but the hooting at night, like, and then the stars in the sky, like, and there's so many critters, and it's just so much more lively. I did not see that coming. Terraria already felt immersive, so I didn't really see a need to make the world feel more alive. It's not even something I thought about, but they were thinking about that, and it's so immersive now. Like, there's just animals and creatures and ecosystems going on all over the place, and you can just get lost. Like, sometimes I'll just stand there and the leaves will be blowing. I don't want to spoil it, but it's just so much more engaging to just exist in Terraria now. Like, just exist. You don't have to be adventuring. I do. This is my jam now. But you can just stand there and just breathe in the fresh video game Terraria air, and you can feel the wind. It's just really, it's like a good book, if that makes any sense. You can feel the atmosphere. But I won't drag on too long for that. The cooking mechanics are really fun. I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting more food, but I wasn't expecting mechanics. So I won't talk too much about that, but I didn't expect that. That was definitely really cool. And then a new level of immersion I talked about. Like, I don't want to keep going over that, but it's like I said, like, the immersion now is like playing Skyrim with all the good immersion mods installed, like better weather, better sky, better NPCs, all those little details that they add to make the world feel like whether you go to this place or that place or not, the world is going to exist with or without you. That feeling is like, it's not that you want it or you're asking for it. It's just that when that's the case and you're playing a game, it sucks you in. It's not even something you think about. It's one of those things where you think about it in an afterthought when you have it to compare to what, used to exist before. But now it's like you don't think about it. It's one of the things, like, the NPCs are just doing their thing. It becomes like real life in a lot of ways, and you don't think about real life like that. Real life is just the way it is. So I won't go too much into that, but yes, the level of immersion to just exist in this game is like outstanding. And in so much early game customization. Now, understand, I knew that they would probably sprinkle some vanity items here and there. And I knew that one of the things that was lacking, of course, was early game engagement to make your character feel cool. Like, you didn't start feeling cool until, like, towards hard mode. But now it's just like, you can make a cool character, but I never considered making a wacky character. Like, the wackiness level that you can go to an early game is just, I stopped even caring about trying to look cool. I just like equipping the wackiest stuff that I can find because it's just so fun. Like, there's like this little balloon that you can wear as a belt. I won't spoil it, but it's just so silly looking, but it's fun to just have it on because it's useful, But of course, if you're vain, like me sometimes, well, I used to be very vain in 1.3.5. In this one, like, I don't care. Like, I will occasionally hit the hide button that allows you to hide, like, certain items and stuff so you can't see them socially. But you know, for the most part, like I don't really care. Like it's just fun to have. Um, and then lastly, combat. I didn't expect combat to feel so satisfying and refined. There's actual spectacle in combat now. Um, well, okay, so Terraria's combat, I won't say it wasn't the best. I will say it was functional, but I don't think it was meant to be a spectacle adventure game where, you know, you're doing all these combos and, you know, like slashing, like, you know, like something like hyper light, whatever that thing's called, where like, you know, every time you hit the slash button you get a different animation. Like I knew Terraria wasn't that, you know, and everything else was so much fun that, you know, I never really expected the combat to get an overhaul, but it got an overhaul, and it shocked me. And fighting, that's one of the reasons I like adventuring so much now, because the combat just feels better, because it's the addition of the better movement, the better controls, the less clunkiness, the immersion. You know, when the wind effects are blowing, or there's a heavy rainstorm and you're fighting, like all of those things start to gel into this beautiful ball of yarn that you just stop thinking about, and it becomes about the moment and less about, oh, I'm glad they fixed this or that thing. It just becomes a whole package. It's just great to be there. It's just great to explore. It's just great to fight things now. So I wasn't expecting spectacle and great combat. But like, yes, now we have something very close to like Hollow Knight combat, and it feels good. I love it. Now, moving on. As I said before, prior to the 1.4.0 updates, I used to have this need to, or I felt as though, to get other people interested or to love this game as much as I do, I had to throw everything at them. Like I had to throw the book at them, I had to throw the kitchen sink, the bathtub, you know, the entire like kitchen utensils, the pots, the pans. I had to throw it all in there so I could show them, like, look, if you don't like the combat, this is here. If you don't like adventuring, this is here. If you don't like the graphics, this is also here. It's just like, it was a way, as I said, to overcompensate for like what Terraria was lacking, right? And you know, I don't think the total package was lacking in much. It just, like I said, needed a few tweaks here and there. And I go into detail about some of the more drastic things that are drawbacks to the game, that I felt held it back, that were a little bit more obscure and more critical in a person who understands the game deeper than probably a lot of other people. In that sense, sort of like I was looking at the through the eyes of like a new player, or through the eyes of, even though yes, Terraria has this huge community and a wiki where you can find any information that you need about the game, but I was looking through the eyes of, well, what if somebody was to pick up the game who've never heard of any of the, you know, popular YouTubers, who never knew about a wiki. Let's say they didn't even have internet. Let's take it that far. They'd be in a really bad position, because I felt as though, and you know, it's not a negative thing, but I really felt as though Terraria relied too heavily on community contribution at one point in its life. And though that is the reason why I think the game is so beloved, at the same time, there had to come a point where the game taught you how to play it without outside influence, because it is immersion breaking, honestly. Like, it's one of those things where I didn't mind it because I had the benefit of being introduced to the game in the same way that I try to introduce people, right? When I was first introduced to the game, I didn't cut down a single tree, build a single workbench, or anything until about mid-game when I started seeing my friends, have these cool-looking houses. I was like, you know what? I want one for myself too. So let me build something, So then I got the idea to start taking things apart and putting them together. But I had the luxury of not cutting down a single tree, getting right to the combat, doing all the invasions, having all of the fun, going to servers, doing PvP, getting to see these huge ice castles and what happens when a bunch of people who aren't ready to fight a boss fight him, and then he wipes all of them and their tombstones go flying everywhere. Like, I got to see some really, really cool stuff. As a matter of fact, my character, right? My character was able to obtain a Spider Queen staff, a Nimbus rod, a full set of mage gear, a full set of hallowed gear, and a full set of chlorophyte magic gear before I saw my first heart crystal. That's the experience that I had. So I feel as though I was a little bit more inclined to invest in this game, even though there were a lot of issues. I talk about those where, your mouse pointer being nice and vivid, as you can see on the screen, where you know where it is at all times. That wasn't always true. There was a point in this game where it was so easy to lose track of your mouse cursor. It was ridiculous. But that's like a common thing. It's sort of like, if I want to describe Terraria's growing pains in its entirety, it would be in the same sense of, man, it would be nice if the game gave me this very basic thing to be helpful, because these little annoyances are taking me out of the experience. It was a collection of those. Like, it was always great, always had great potential, always fun, but it was these little nitpicky things that would take you out of the experience, and then you would always have to go run to some other place, some wiki, some forum, to find out how to solve the problem. Like, even, and I didn't talk about this in my State of the Game address because I had actually forgotten about it, but there was a time where if you wanted to do multiplayer in Terraria, you had to download a third-party app. Now, you didn't have to. What I mean is, if you were not a tech-savvy individual who didn't really understand the nuts and bolts of how, like, connections and internet works and computers and altering, like, files inside the game, if you didn't have that type of knowledge, you were not going to be doing multiplayer unless you knew someone who knew how to do that stuff, or you went to some third-party resource. And it's one of those things where it's just like, why? Like, this game is so fun in multiplayer. Why is that one of the hardest features to use? It's like, in a nutshell, I would say 1.4.0, the 1.4.0 version of Terraria is a collection of it finally, taking care of all of those little frustrations. It's just like, okay, it's been a long time coming. Let's squash this. Let's include the bugs. Let's include the bugs, the glitches, the little annoying, like, crashes and stuff. They just said, you know what? It's been a long time coming. Let's just squash all of these issues one by one by one by one. And that's in addition to all of the other upgrades. So, in a sense, like, this game is a collection of progress in its entirety. Like, everything that was always great about this game has been improved, and all of the things that were not so great about this game were improved. And even the things that were not particularly great, but not bad either. They were kind of meh, mediocre. They were improved. So it's just like the game, in a sense, from every nook, every cranny, every crevice, every aspect, at least from what I've seen, has been overhauled. So when I say something that sounds very biased, where I always saw this game as a 10, all right, if I could explain it, for example, Dark Souls is a very flawed masterpiece, right? I love the game. It has its problems. Actually, there's 3 games in the series, and they all have their problems. But I still love them. It doesn't stop me from saying that, yes, they're 10. Well, I think Dark Souls 3 is a 10 out of 10. Dark Souls 2 is lower, But aside from that, that's not what this is about. I'm just making a comparison. I felt as though Dark Souls and Terraria were very close. Like, I loved them almost equally. And I consider Dark Souls to be, a masterpiece, like especially 3 to be a 10 out of 10 game. So when I say Terraria was a 10 out of 10, it was also a flawed masterpiece, Like, it was just the little things that were holding it back. It felt like a complete game, but it just needed to be polished for me, right? Well, now it's been improved, okay? And I know giving a game a rating like 14 out of 10 sounds extremely biased, but when I put it that way, could someone else understand why it is that's an actual realistic score? These updates collectively make this game about, I would say, a 14 out of 10, and being humble would be 12 out of 10, but no matter how you slice it, it would sound very biased and like a huge fanboy. You're not allowed to rate a game, over the 10. Like, either it's a 10 or it's lower than 10. I'm so serious. This game deserves more than just a 10. It's just that good. So all things considered, with everything that I've said, I no longer have this strong desire to try to prove a point or to build these massive, grand, overcompensating structures or these adventure maps. Though I am still going to do them, it's going to be in a different spirit, though. If I want to be clear, like I still like them. I think they're nice, but like I said, if I'm being honest, I would say the adventure map that I've been working on the hardest is indeed fun. It's more for people who enjoy a challenge like myself. But it does not compare to just the vanilla 1.4 version of Terraria. That's its own thing. So, yeah, I don't have that desire anymore. Like, I would say I probably believe after I create my 2 maps, one is a luxury map that is almost finished. I'm thinking about releasing it probably unfinished, but I saw some of the updates and I'm like, people would be sorely losing out if I, didn't incorporate some of this stuff. But, maybe it'd be an ode to, or a tribute to 1.3.5, But I don't know. I'll think about it. But what I'll say is, as much work as I put into those maps to try to show someone, hey, look, this game is everything. Just the newer version, the vanilla game, the 1.4.0 updates, trump in every way any adventure map I've ever conceived of creating. Because it's just based on pure fun. There's nothing to prove. There's no pressure. It's just a bunch of Terraria goodness, Terraria wackiness, and it's oh man, I just trying to find the words to describe how engaging everything is, where I feel like I can just let go of the wheel now. I can say, you know what, Terraria, we've had a rocky We've had a rocky relationship, But you know what? I love you just the way you are. But Terraria decides, you know what? That's not good enough. I'm gonna be better. And you know, it just sounds so biased, but it is the most honest perspective that I can give you. It deserves every ounce of the love and attention that I've been giving this game for years. And I'm so happy that now new players can enjoy it the same way that I do without me having to lift a single finger. The game will carry its own weight, and I love it. You know, it's actually kind of funny. If you would have asked me about a year ago what I thought my favorite feature in Terraria 1.4.0 would have been, I would have told you sitting in chairs or just interacting with furniture, period. Because around that time, I think I just fully adopted the role of building things. You know, like that was my new favorite thing, was to just build stuff, because I hadn't seen it all and done it all, but it's one of those things where I was pretty sure, at least from what I knew about the game, that nothing would surpass what I brought to the table with what Terraria allows you to do. Not to give myself the credit, just more so the game allows you to do so much. It's a literal sandbox. So I had the idea that any idea I could conceive, with the notion of knowing what this game could be, is always going to surpass what the game is, right? In its current state. And so, you know, I just wanted to engage in the social aspects. You know, it would have been nice to take a break from the adventuring, because I had mostly done it all. Now it was about the challenge, and, you know, just sit, have a pizza party with my friends, you know, not really do anything, because the game, it was going to look prettier. You know, the obvious improvements were going to be there, but it was going to still be Terraria, the flawed masterpiece that I love and adore. And I was just more interested in just taking a seat, relaxing, and just saying, you know what, let's just enjoy the new updates. Let's celebrate by basking in, you know, about 9 years of content. Let's do that. And I would have been wrong, because what I truly did not expect was for my new favorite thing to be exploring. My two favorite things are journey mode and actually exploring. Now, I explained somewhat why it is that exploring is so much more appealing to me in this version of Terraria. But I would say what caught my interest the most was how journey mode allows you to tweak Terraria's adventuring portion in ways very similar to how you can be creative with building something. And I never thought that something like that would exist. You can craft your adventuring experience the same exact way that you can craft a nice house, a luxury home, a resort, a church, whatever it is that your heart's content, or a machine. You know, some people build elaborate machines in Terraria using the wiring system, but you can actually craft your adventuring in the same way. And I never thought that they would sandbox adventuring. You know, like I'm still convinced that's an original concept. Like, somebody's going to have to show me proof that this has been done before, because this is revolutionary to me. Like, I've played some really good games, and I love me a good sandbox, but I have yet to play a sandbox game that allows you to sandbox the actual adventuring portion. Now, mind you, they give you options on how you want to approach stuff. You know, that's the flexibility of like most sandbox games, right? But I don't think any of them has ever allowed you to tweak how you approach things, like in the very minutest of details. And now, if that's not enough, it goes even further than that. I was allowed access to experiences with this game that I've never had in any other game with the 1.4.0 updates. Never. So let me give you a very perfect and clear example. I am the type of player, as I probably already said, who loves a challenge. I like a game to test me. I want to feel like I'm improving both in game and out of game. I want to feel my progression, in both formats, like meta and inside game, right? But there's some very few experiences that I can describe to you that I can guarantee that are very specific and very personal, yet enjoyable. And even if you're a person who's played many games like me, especially if you love yourself a good sandbox, tell me if you've ever experienced this before. I want to describe this to you because it gives me chills, right? So I'm playing Journey mode currently as a hardcore gamer, quote unquote, who loves a challenge. And I'm currently playing with another player who isn't necessarily into that type of thing, They just like playing games, and I would say my viewpoint of them, not to speak for them, but just playing with them enough to know what they like and don't like, right? They just like to relax in a game, They want to be able to just enjoy themselves and use it as not necessarily a time waster, but just a meaningful experience to use your time, right? They're not interested in a boss testing their patience and things like that, right? If I can put it as clearly as possible. Because, I feel like casual gamer is a bit overboard because the person I'm playing with isn't casual. They play games. It's just they're not into the Dark Souls difficult, if that makes any sense, type of games. They'll play some Skyrim. They'll play some Subnautica. They'll play some some other sandboxes like Fallout. But they're not the Dark Souls type of gamer, if that makes any sense, right? But I am. And whilst I'm playing with this person, we're doing the same things together, we're adventuring together, and they're exploring everything, anywhere, as much as they want, and I'm trying to keep up. So the new challenge isn't necessarily trying to keep that person safe or making sure that their experience isn't ruined by some cheesy boss or something like that, or something similar. Instead, they want me to come experience the game through their eyes, but I'm not having the same exact experience because it's dangerous for me in those places. So, me being the hardcore gamer that I am, it's my responsibility now to rise to the occasion, no matter how under-equipped I am, no matter how mentally unprepared I might be at the time, to rise to the occasion and explore the very same places that they're exploring so easily. But for me, it's a challenge. And I've never had that happen before, where I'm the one who needs to keep up, And it just feels so great because it's not a catering or it doesn't dilute the experience. Because we're playing together, we're gathering the same materials, we're doing the same research. I have to depend on them to do some impossible things. If something falls into a pit of lava, I need them to go get it for me because the amount of I'm just speaking about my experience. I'm not even trying to discuss what I think the developers were intending to do. This is the experience I had, and it was magical. I, for the first time, am playing with someone who I love playing games with, who I love, just being around in real life, who's very dear to me, and we're having an amazing time, but we both get to play how we want to play. And I know it sounds so crazy and probably so strange, but I love for once being the one who needs to catch up. Like, I'm the one who has to rise to the occasion. It's such an unusual experience that I pretty much held it in my chest really tight. It's just like, wow, I'm probably not going to get this anywhere else. And the reason that I'm saying it the way that I am and why I'm trying to express how heartwarming it is because that's just the beginning. There's so much more game to explore. And what I've seen so far is immaculate. And this is in addition to all of the updates to the liveliness of the game, the updates to the graphics, the updates to the combat. It just keeps piling on and piling on. And I think at a certain point, as biased as I might seem about saying that I honestly believe this game deserves something like a 12 out of 10. Just being humble, but in my personal experience, I would have to give this game a 14 out of 10. I'm trying to see if I can communicate that effectively. There's just moments in this game that cannot be found anywhere else, in my opinion. Now I know someone can easily say at this point, Toxopholite, come on, don't you think you're being a little generous here? You yourself just said there's a whole lot more game to play. How could you be certain that this game is a 14 out of 10 or even a 12 out of 10? I mean, come on, you're being biased. And I would say, look, I already know what hard mode is like. Hard mode in Terraria, just in the 1.3.5 version, is amazing. And then we're going to get hard mode with more stuff, and the stuff that we already have in 1.4.0, the immersion, the new environment, the liveliness of the world. Like, I already know what I'm getting. That's how I'm so confident about this rating. Like, I know what to expect in hard mode because, as I said before, all the things that I felt were lacking in this game have been addressed. I cannot find one thing in this game that I had an issue with. It was those minor nagging details. I haven't found one of them yet. And those nagging details were always little small technical annoyances that would break immersion. It was mostly the immersion breaking, I think, that was my biggest issue with the game prior to the updates. It's just like, I want to be immersed and I don't want something to stop me that, it's like some sort of barrier, like issues with controls or bugs or crashes or the combat being clunky or dying because I don't want to get into it. Those problems do not exist anymore, and I have hard mode waiting for me. And you already heard me describe what I'm enjoying about adventuring now is for once being the one who has to rise to the occasion. That means that steep curve is going to go even higher in hard mode, which means that now I have to mentally prepare myself for when the world eventually goes corrupt and all of the enemies are 3 times as difficult to kill and the danger is just that much more prevalent. I have to rise to the occasion. And for me, it's a relaxing experience. Like, I don't have any pressure. I don't have to worry about, feeling like I'm on an escort mission. I get to just play the game as I would if I was by myself. And I would say this is the first time that I've ever felt like I was playing by myself, as far as my desires are concerned, how I enjoy my difficulty, how I enjoy challenges, but also playing with someone else and not having to compromise. That is such an amazing feeling. I love it. And I have to mention one other thing that I really love. So at any point in the game, when playing journey mode, right? Adventuring and stuff like that. If at any time you feel as though the difficulty is kind of like, or the challenge is, kind of tapering off, or maybe like kind of like you're starting to get a little too powerful, all you have to do is just adjust that dial just a tad bit to meet, your expectations, and it'll like you can literally craft your own experience. And what I love, especially playing with someone else, is that you can even crank it up at sometimes a tad bit beyond your own skill level. I'm speaking about me, my own skill level particularly. Like I can crank it just a little bit past my own skill level. And the beautiful thing is I'll have that extra help, from the person I'm playing with, who again isn't into the same type of difficulty I am, to assist me to, it's like it's a greater challenge that you might need a hand with, but that hand is there, so it's okay to crank the difficulty up just that tad bit higher. And again, like that's just such a unique and beautiful experience. Like I really like it. And like I said, I really thought that with all of these great updates and stuff, that right now I would be sitting, in a chair, just listening to the birds chirp, creating a little house for the toads, or for the jungle frogs to hear them croak at night, and probably just playing some Terraria golf, on the side, because, I'd seen it all. But again, I would have been very wrong, and I would have missed out on an amazing experience. Like it stuck with me. I was just having a conversation with someone about my experience with this game a few days ago, and then also today, where I was just saying, like, I haven't felt this engaged and inspired by a video game since I was a young 16-year-old boy who was still in high school and still trying to figure the world out. And games were just this great pastime that you were looking forward to when you got out of class and you got back home. And I wasn't the type to do their homework when they were supposed to. So I don't know, it was just a nice little I won't even say escape. I don't think I've ever used video games as an escape when I was younger, but I will say that I don't know, there was like a certain intimate relationship with video games in the past that I feel is lost in this current era. And I don't want to get dramatic, and I don't want to sound like I'm critiquing other companies, so I won't get into detail. I'll just say that, aside from mentioning any other developer, forget about that for a second. Let's just talk about Relogic and Redigit and those amazingly brilliant group of people that brought this game together. Like, bravo, great job. I haven't felt this way about a game in a very long time. Even Terraria, like, as much as I loved it before these updates, I haven't had this feeling, this connection with a game since I was very young. So thank you for that. So I wouldn't say that I did this on purpose, but I did come into 1.4.0 with certain expectations and a certain way that I wanted to approach the game in mind. I kind of knew what I wanted, and that's what I was going to do. I didn't really have the desire to see all the things. I was going to go ahead and let the person I was playing with do that and enjoy themselves in that way. And, it just became a thing where they wanted to show me something, and I took the position of, oh, okay, that's right. They're somewhat new to this game, so of course they're going to be excited. They haven't seen a lot of the things in the game that I already know about. But that's not how it went at all. Anytime the person I was playing with wanted to show me something cool, it was cool. And even if half of the time it was something that I've already seen before in 1.3.5, it was different enough to where it was still interesting. But what really took the cake was that no matter how repetitive something might have seemed, even in theory, right? Let's say that I wasn't nearly as excited as they were, even though that's not true, when they would discover something interesting. Every time I opened up a treasure chest, that was a chance to duplicate a new item and do some research. So it was always a treasure, really, no matter what I ran into. Every brick that I blew up or dug through, every liquid that I put in a bucket, every bottle of honey that I made, it was almost a Zen-like experience. Where, okay, so I'll say this. In my state of the game address, and this was just me being cynical, right? I was just on a wave of, look, Relogic. If you could just throw in some fetch quests, right? Just anything to introduce players to the idea that they're going to have to start digging around and exploring and looking for treasure. Just have the NPCs, if you're not going to do anything else, just give them fetch quests. Give them something to do, right? And that was me being cynical because I was expecting the new stuff. You know what I mean? Like, everybody expects the new stuff. But I wasn't expecting a system overhaul. So I'm not sure if there are fetch quests just yet. I would say there are things that are similar to a fetch quest, but I would say they're superior than the typical go here and do that. Only because a lot of things just naturally unlock, at least from what I've seen, just playing the game. Like, not even really defeating this boss or that boss, just existing in the world and adventuring, you're always making progress. And so there's one NPC, she's the zoologist, and at least from what I've seen, the more enemies that you encounter and destroy, she starts to unlock more and more items for you to buy and rewards. And it's not quite a fetch quest, but it is like, go out there and do stuff and you'll be rewarded. And it's not directly a, go to this specific place. It's just like, no, just go play the game. And the more things you encounter, the more things you'll unlock. And that seems to be true in a lot of slightly adjusted different ways. Whereas now you engage with the NPCs and not even fetch quests, but just their living circumstances, make a house for me in this area and I'll give you this item. and this item will make life easier for you and me. And you know, I'm not going to pretend as if like that specifically is some revolutionary thing. But I can say that undeniably a lot of thought went into it, because it's not a cop out. I feel that their version of motivating or rewarding players for questing fits the personality of this game much better than just tacking on, a fetch quest for the sake of doing it. Now, again, that was me being cynical, because I didn't think we'd get an overhaul in the same manner we did. I knew there were going to be new things, as I said before. Like, I knew the game was going to be improved. I knew they were looking forward to addressing some stuff. I wasn't expecting a nook and cranny overhaul, is what I'm saying. Like, I did not see this coming at all. And so questing in itself is a reward outside of what you find in treasure chests. And I also want to point this out. I don't recall ever finding golden chests in caverns before. And so this is just my experience. I was just, blowing my way through a cavern because I hate digging. So I use bombs. And I come across a golden chest, and I see golden chests, in the dungeon and things like that all the time. I think there are some in some other locations that I won't spoil, but yeah, I it's just a chest. But when I saw it there, I was like, wait, treasure? I didn't kill. Well, I did kill a enemy who was rather rare and gave me something pretty cool, but just seeing a chest just randomly laying out in the middle of a cavern was just invigorating. And I was just like, wow, so this is what this game is going to be, right? So I came in with expectations, and I said, yeah, I'm going to do this. And it's like I said, I was mostly going to sit in chairs, but I knew the person I was playing with was going to be excited. We were going to do some questing, but for the most part, my interest was going to be just creating a social environment for us when they eventually, got over the honeymoon phase, of the game, and it would be something to fall back on. That was my expectation, because, again, a lot of things were previously locked behind hard mode, and it's like I said before, the person who I'm playing with isn't really into, the Dark Souls type of difficulty. So the fact that the game starts getting fun after the game turns into Dark Souls was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, here it comes, I like all these updates. They're doing a great job, but we're going to get to that point where you gotta play Dark Souls to get the good stuff, But again, that's not the case. Like, they start throwing stuff at you from the gate. Like, as soon as you touch ground, like, the game just starts throwing spectacle at you. And because that was the case, I kind of got lost in the moment, and it stopped being about what it is that I had planned, and it started being more about, okay, what's next? Like, I'm expecting, I'm gonna run into, like, the honeymoon phase is gonna wear off, but I'm just, maybe I'm just enamored with how pretty the game looks. I mean, it's always been a beautiful art style, but I mean, it's just so much more vibrant, right? So, I'm waiting to get over that phase, but it just never happens. The more I just adventure, and I start ignoring the additions, like, the leaves falling from the trees and the wind effects, it starts becoming the norm, right? And you expect to kind of, well, at least me, I expected to get numb to it. It's just like, oh, okay, it's cool. But no, it's just like the more I started to ignore it and it just became part of the experience, I started to lose myself. And the next thing you know, 6 hours had passed and it only felt like 30 minutes. I think I can even recall the exact moment that I got super immersed into this game until Terraria 1.4.0, and I knew from that point on, like, adventuring was going to be my new favorite thing. Is when I was on a mission, if I recall correctly, to try to find the angler, and the barricade that was stopping me repeatedly was this patch of corruption where just, I think, way too many corruptors, I forgot what you call them, come out. I was going to call them chimeras, but that's not the name of them. That's those are the enemies from a different type of world sickness. But anyhow, or world disease. I'm not sure what you would call it. Like the evil part of the world that you're trying to cleanse. But anyhow, so I'm trying to adventure there, and that's my barricade, and it takes me about 3 attempts. I think the third attempt, about 1/3 of the way there, a monsoon breaks out, and the thunder is cracking in the background, and the water is coming down heavy, and I could feel the wind and the bitter cold of the rain droplets in my, like, almost in my soul, if that makes any sense. Like, and I started to kind of shiver a little bit. Maybe it's because one of my windows was open and it was a bit colder, but what I'm saying is I could feel it, and it made that small encounter. It wasn't a boss. It wasn't, anything spectacular like a dungeon or, anything that, unlocks world progression per se. But it just felt so epic trekking through that rainstorm. And I think it was that at that very moment is when I got lost in this game. And from that moment, I realized that adventuring was going to be my new thing. And I put everything else on hold. Terraria Golf on hold. The whole sitting in chairs thing, I've done it, but it seems just like that extra, that extra bit of, like, seasoning on top. It's not the main course, but I'm glad it's there type thing. It's just, yeah, I came in with expectations and they went right out the window. So now I'm considering this. I love journey mode. I love just existing in this new lively world, right? So I'm in a privileged position where I don't have to create my own fun anymore. And again, I have to emphasize, it's not that Terraria wasn't fun. It's just that there were a lot of parts that, had their problems. And once you've done them, you're kind of glad that you got it out of the way. Like mining, for example. I absolutely hate mining, but I absolutely love blowing things up. So even though technically using bombs is still mining, because it has the same result, it's faster and it's less grindy. What I mean is, the grindy parts of the game are the ones that are a lot slower, and they're not necessarily the most entertaining parts. And when you think about the fact that you gotta do them to get things, it can get a little, overbearing. It's just like, oh, I gotta go do this. And you're always trying to find a way to either spice it up. Well, I'm speaking for me. I'm always trying to find a way to either spice it up add some kind of intensity to the situation, or do it in a different way, or in the most basic sense, just speed it up, because I don't want to sit there for a good 10 minutes, like hacking at some ores, a large vein of ores, just one by one. It's just I know there's a certain, probably like a peaceful, like there's probably people who enjoy doing that because it's peaceful, it's busy work, they can just kind of shut their brain off. But I'm not that type of person like that. For me, there are zen-like moments in this game, but mining is not one of the things that I enjoy. With that said, I was looking forward to a lot of systems that I thought would be things that I would pay the most attention to, or that would spice the game up for me. But it turns out that I'm not even really using them. Now, that's not to say that I'm not glad that they exist, because as I said earlier, like that already proves that just outside of what, I would say what I do know, that there is replay value, because there's these mechanics that exist that I'm not using, and perhaps in another playthrough I can use those things. Maybe I'll get a new appreciation for them, right? But what I'm saying is, just from what I've experienced so far, I'm not really interested. It's not something I'm seeking out. I don't feel like I need to use them. I'm just having a blast, just playing the vanilla game, well, not vanilla, but 1.4.0. I'm just having fun without even using some of the newer features. For example, there's the NPC happiness and pylon system. Just to be honest, let me talk about the NPC happiness, right? Now, what I like is how pretty early on in my playthrough, I was able to completely ignore that system because I found a really fun mechanic. Now, it's not that I don't care whether the NPCs are happy or not. It's just not my concern right now. Adventuring is my concern. I even make a reference to it in my playthrough, which is pretty funny. But I'll get around to it. But also the pylons. I do like the teleporter system in Terraria, and it's one of the things that I make sure to add to my rather spectacularly large builds, where I like pack the world with as much content as possible, because it's not very, I would say, traversal friendly, because these big buildings really restrict aerial movement, because they're so tall and intimidating in some sense. So the teleportation system kind of keeps it a little bit more grounded, and it's friendly to new players and veterans. So whether you're a person who has the best wings in the game, or you're a person who is just now starting out and you have no equipment, you can equally get around just as effectively. So it's like I said, it's more of like a social structure. It's to take advantage of the atmosphere of Terraria, and just when you don't feel like adventuring, you just kind of want to talk with your friends, it's a nice place to hang out. But yes, I'm not even using the pylons, because I just like traversing in this game, because the movement is just so much better. It's so much sharper. It feels good to go back and forth, and they don't hide the mounts, the really good mounts behind some grindy 1% chance anymore. Like there's a lot of the really good mounts and stuff aren't hidden behind hard mode or some difficulty spike. It's like, if you can afford it, it's right there for you almost in the very beginning of the game, and I really like that. So yet another feature that I know I'll absolutely love when I get around to it, but I am absolutely just not using really, is the bestiary. I thought the whole gotta catch 'em all thing would be my new go-to. Like maybe that would spice adventuring up. Like I really thought that when I saw the bestiary, I saw the angle they were going for. It's just like, okay, so we're gonna make things grindy. At least give some sort of reward system for fighting the same enemies over and over and over again. And I was just like, well, that's a way. But I wasn't expecting that grindiness to be gone. I was just thinking like they were gonna add a reward system behind it because that's kind of what Terraria is and was, the flawed masterpiece that exists before me. But as I said before, like it's the grindiness. It's like it's not really there anymore. It's just playing just feels so natural and it's hard to describe in words. Like it just feels good to play. Nothing's breaking my immersion. I'm not feeling like the sense of dread, like, oh, I gotta go do this to get the thing. Like it's just adventuring period is just so zen like. Like it's I don't even think about it. It's just I want to go and I want to see the things. So yeah, the bestiary is just kind of filling itself out, and I'll get around to checking on it, but it's not my incentive to go out and explore. Like it's just, like I said, it's another great feature, great achievement in game design, but I'm just not using it because there's so many other entertaining things. Like I would say what's captured my interest the most that I didn't even think would. I don't even think it was on the top of my list. Like I said, I made a funny tier list that has like a top 20 plus things about like the game spoilers that I was sure were going to be the best additions. But the research system is like my favorite thing. Like beside adventuring and questing, like just doing research on every single piece of dirt that I grab, every sample of plankton, everything, just research. I absolutely love doing that, and I didn't think that I didn't even consider it. It wasn't even on my radar. But it's like I said, this game has been surprising me repeatedly. So yes, the bestiary was, I believe, on my list, up there, if not the top tier candidate, like number one on there. It was at least in the top 3. I don't think the top 5, more likely the top 3, but we'll go over it. But yes, I didn't even have research on my on my radar, and it's my favorite thing right next to questing. Terraria Golf. Let's talk about the amazing addition that is Terraria Golf. As cool as it is, as much as I was looking forward to playing it because I was so sure that, it would be my new favorite relaxing pastime. Just, play some nice, peaceful Terraria Golf, not fighting any enemies, not worrying about questing, not worrying about having to dig for ores, just laying back, relaxing, talking with my friends in a nice, beautiful golf course, and just enjoying our time together, like not actually adventuring, but like I said, the replay value. Terraria Golf is gonna it's gonna be there when I'm done exploring everything. I'm in no rush to get to Terraria Golf like I initially thought I'd be, and it's just imagine how excited I am, right? That as much fun as I'm having right now, doing something in Terraria early game that I absolutely used to dread doing, and I used to always add a whole bunch of things to spice it up. I had these whole character sheets where you would, like, your goal would be to make a character class It was like a list of maybe 30 classes, your character's story, goals, just to like make, I would say myself or anyone playing with me very goal oriented, so that the grindiness was just, a necessary evil. It didn't feel like a mindless, like, what am I doing with my time type of thing, like, especially if you don't know everything about the game, because after, I just speaking from a person who didn't particularly like this game. I want to speak about that later if I remember, but they weren't a fan. But I would say that with the character sheet and the goal-oriented mindset, they were able to get into it a little bit more, and I felt as though something like that was necessary. But it's sort of like, that's why I kind of believe that, the developers and myself had visions for this game that were very similar, but theirs was just much more lively. Like, it wasn't some tacked on feature to try to, I would say, to try to be the sugar that helps the medicine go down. They were thinking, let's just make this game fun to play and make people have goals, but it's part of advancing gameplay. It's not just some tacked on feature like other games. Let's make it a part of the game. Let's make it organic. Let's make it an experience. And I'm glad that they took that route, because to be honest, I was just at that point, it was nothing against Relogic or any gaming company. It's just that as a person who's been playing games for a while, I've just come to realize that what the fans want and what the company wants usually doesn't match. And as brilliant as an idea fans may have about how a game could be better, 9 times out of 10, companies aren't going to apply those ideas. Like, I'll give a perfect example. This is just to give an example, so I'll speak on it briefly, not to get stray too far off the subject. Like fighting games. I used to love fighting games. And really early in their life, when I would say they became popular and more companies started making them, and they were actually good, they weren't just trying to be Street Fighter, the idea of DLC came out. Now, this is brilliant, right? Because that means that when the game came out, any glitches, abnormalities, characters that they wanted to add, different color schemes, outfits, if they had some ideas they couldn't get into the game originally because they didn't have time, they could add all of those things. DLC was this brilliant thing, right? A long time ago. But of course, game companies gotta be game companies, and they did things like add 2 more characters, and characters that were already on the disc, but they were locked behind some. It's just, not to get too much into it, but it's very rare where a company sees the game as fans. And as a person who's been playing video games for a while, I just come to peace with the fact that I might have a vision for a game, but I try not to get too invested, because that's sort of like a one-way ticket to disappointment, because you quickly realize that, yes, you see what this game could be, right? But the developers aren't necessarily going to listen to you, care what you think. They're going to make what they want to make, as flawed as it is, and you just have to take it. You can take it or leave it. And I appreciated that, because I was like, you know what? I'll leave it. That's fine. If that's how it's going to be, that's fine. I don't need to play these games. Like, there's plenty of good games out there. If the developers don't love their project as much as I do, I can disengage just as easy as they can. And I don't believe it was a toxic relationship. It's just, it was one of those necessary evils, because, I can appreciate the amount of effort it takes to have an idea in your mind, right? And then make it come to fruition. Like, just getting to that step alone, even if a game is terrible, I still like bad games, for example, because I know how difficult it is as a creator to make your what's in your head a reality, right? And a lot of times I can understand if a person was at their breaking point where it's just like just getting the project to be somewhat what they wanted it to be was such a hassle that maybe by the time the fans enjoy it, the developer's done with it, you know? And I believe Terraria went through that phase as well. Like there was a time when the main developer quit on this game completely and it was taken up by other people. So I'm not praising Terraria in a sense of where, you know, it was this perfect storm. No, it was a very happy accident. Let's be honest here. But I'm glad that this accident happened because now we have something that is almost unrealistic. That's why when I describe this game as too good to be true, it really is. This game was supposed to be done with its updates a long time ago. I want you to really think about this. This game has been supported on and off by the community and by the developers for about 9 years. This is about 9 years of trial and error, like figuring out how to get it right. You know, I can appreciate that struggle, you know, as a creator, like I understand. But this is a gem here, like a complete diamond that was really rough and it just kept getting, you know, hammered on it until it became this perfect diamond. And that's why, as much as biased as it may sound for me to call this game, you know, if I'm being you know, dishonest, a 12 out of 10, I really mean it. Like, just think about it. I'm not even going to be playing Terraria Golf. And if by some chance I get bored of, you know, adventuring, golf is waiting for me. I mean, I can say the same thing for Master Mode. I wasn't expecting Journey Mode to be such a craftable experience. I would have only been playing Master Mode to spice things up. But I'm enjoying the challenge now. Like, just wanting to do research, whether I'm prepared for it or not, do the whole smash and grab thing. Like, I'm doing some real legit legwork here of looking at the research being more important than killing anything. Like, I absolutely love killing enemies in most adventure games, but in this game, it's just a necessary evil, and the combat's good. See, it's one of those things where all of the things you gotta do to get the thing are actually all fun, but you don't think about them. They're just fun, but your real mission is something else completely different. And I like I said, I think it's just one of those happy accidents where the game just got supported for so long that all of the little flaws and annoyances just got hammered out eventually. And that's very unusual for any game because it's like I said, most developers, I guess they get to a point where a game's not worth investing money in anymore. You know, there could be a million things. I appreciate the fact that Terraria is what it is. And yes, like I said before, I can't say it enough. I absolutely love it. Alright, so with all of that out of the way, let's just talk about how the game performs overall. Now, Terraria, unfortunately, has always had like these little nitpicky, I don't even know if I would call them bugs and glitches. I mean, it did have those, but just like these annoying performance issues that they were inconsistent, and they kind of, I don't know, like I won't say they held the game back. It's just like, it was just clunky, and it would have been nice if combat was a lot smoother and menus were a lot like more consistent. When you open them, like the delay, for example, if you wanted to open a chest. Okay, I'll give a perfect example. Let's say you were getting invaded by goblins, but you weren't properly equipped, and you just needed to grab something out of your chest real quick. It was so dangerous to do that because if you tried to open up your chest, like it was no guarantee that it was going to open as soon as you clicked it. Sometimes it might take like half a second to respond. And then if you're a person who plays in a hybrid manner like me with mouse and keyboard and controller, if it doesn't respond and then you're just like, you know what, screw it, I'll just fight with what I have. Guess what? You're locked out of your controller now. And those goblins are going to have their way with you for those split seconds because, like, you don't know, well, I'm speaking about me, like, you don't know whether to cancel the menu using the actual keyboard or cancel the menu using the controller, which one responded while you were trying to get it open. Like, sometimes I was just rapidly hitting escape just to try to get out of it, but there was that delay. And this comes with, like, movement, too. Like, movement was clunky sometimes. And, you know, it's just, like, a little glitches, like, a little hoiking that people love that I absolutely hate. It irritates me. It's been several times when hoiking mechanics have gotten me killed. So I absolutely despise them, but I understand why they kept them. But I think that they're a little bit more refined now. They're not as buggy, but they still work because, you know, there's groups of people who like that mechanic. You know, it's not completely, it's not game-breakingly terrible, but, you know, they did fix it up a little bit. So I'm glad that, you know, it won't happen nearly as often by accident. If you want to hoik on purpose, then you can still do it. But accidentally, I don't think it'll happen nearly as much. Load times are, wow, like almost non-existent. Waiting for your world to generate or load is much shorter. I love it. And then for the load times that are pretty much the same, because, you know, creating a new world is going to take time. It's not nearly as like I won't say like scratching on a chalkboard, but it's just one of those little irritations. Like, you want to get into the game, but you gotta wait. You know, which is, you know, reasonable. Like, I don't think I've ever been mad at Terraria for having to load. You know, because I make large worlds, so they always take time. But, you know, I'm not angry at Terraria for, you know, generating a completely original world for me, and it's going to take time. It's just that now, you know, with everything that's been added, it's useful. You get a little tidbits of lore, little hints and tips here and there, which I absolutely love, because I did mention that in the State of the Game address, how Terraria doesn't give you like little tips and hints would be so useful in this game, but it's just like they just, prior to the update, they just didn't give it to you. Like, NPCs, as far as information was concerned, were pretty much useless in hard mode. Like, you couldn't ask anybody any questions. Like, it's just, everybody was just like, I don't know, you know. And I could understand, you know, the world going corrupt and everybody just panicking and not knowing what's going on, but, you know, from a gameplay perspective, like, that wasn't really very useful. Again, through the eyes of a new player, like, now you have challenges that are twice as difficult with no guidance. You know, it's just, it was kind of brutal, and I'm glad that that was fixed. And of course, bug fixes, worlds crashing accidentally. Like, I've only had that happen to me twice, but still, I'm glad that it's gone. You know, there was like this other bug. I don't know how common it is, so I won't speak on it like in a negative light. I'll just say that I'm glad that it's gone, but there was this bug. Again, it was another like menu bug where just pulling up your inventory had the same issue as like opening up containers, where, you know, like, a lot of times I would just double tap it, just to be like, if you're not gonna open, it's fine. Like, I'll just wait till I get to a safe space and open up the menu. Like, another thing, like the smart cursors was another example where sometimes smart cursor wouldn't respond or do really wacky things. I'm glad that it was added, because at a certain point, switching weapons, switching out your weapon for tools, especially when you're spelunking or going down in caves and things like that, was a little much because enemies tend to like not leave you alone. Like you had to go to the extreme sometimes, just box yourself in just so you can have some peace and quiet while you dig, but now, I mean, this was a prior update. They added an update where the smart cursor could allow you to switch to your tools without having to de-equip your weapon, but it was still kind of wacky sometimes, and then now that's fixed, so it responds much better. I could feel the item and weapon balance. For example, I used to really never use Jester's arrows like that. Not that I thought that they were overpowered. It's just one of those things where it's just like, I don't know, the combat wasn't engaging enough for me to bother using my fallen stars for arrows. I would rather just consume my items. Well, not consume them, but conserve them, and then wait for like worthy enemies, like save the stars for the star cannon, or like for stars in the bottle. Don't waste them on making Jester's arrows, which are really powerful, but you go through them really fast, and they're overpowered, and it's just, I don't know. I just kind of, they were cool. I'm not criticizing them. It's just like, it just didn't feel like, I just didn't feel right using them. Like it just seemed like a waste, right? However, they're a lot more fun to use in the update because I feel that they're a little bit more balanced. I would say the two arrows that I've always compared were the Hellfire arrows and the Jester's arrow. And I felt as though the Jester arrow was just better. But when I speak about balance, it's like, I know that the Hellfire arrow is supposed to be a later difficulty type weapon or ammunition type, and I feel as though they're about equal now, where I always felt like the Jester arrow was just better, but the Hellfire arrow made more sense, if that makes, if you understand what I mean, where it's just, you just collect Hellfire arrows. Like, you don't have to waste a useful resource to make them and then have this overpowered spammy type projectile. Like, I don't know, it felt inconsistent, and I would say they're about even now, whereas the Hellfire arrow, at least from what I've saw, does more damage and knockback, and the Jester arrow is somewhat weaker, but it has really great piercing. It's great for exploring because it gives off light, and it's not nearly as grindy to make them or wasteful, at least in journey mode, if done properly. So I could feel like, especially with journey mode too, I like the balancing where in journey I can feel, from a person who didn't really like adventuring all that much, at least in normal mode, in 1.3.5, I could feel the little annoyances that were taken into consideration when you play Journey, because the wings, as small as a buff as they are, they're not overpowered, but it just gives you that extra bit of movement ability, so you can rise to the occasion almost right away. And fall damage isn't a thing. Like, you can just go exploring without worrying about having to find a magic horseshoe. It's just, I just like the fact that, like, everything isn't out to kill you, but it is. Whereas if you want the challenge of saying, hey, I like falling to my death, I like having to get this or that item first before I can just freely, jump here and there, I understand that. I'll probably do that too. I'm just saying, I feel the balance changes even now. I have a lot more game to explore and see, but I can feel it right away that a lot of thought and consideration went into the balance changes. And let me talk about the controls. Now, because I play a hybrid setup, controller and mouse and keyboard, I ran into a lot of issues, and I didn't overcome them per se. It's just more so I managed. So I did okay. But I would say now with the much smoother interface and controls and response times, combat and movement almost feels like playing a fighting game. And that's why I feel like combat just feels so much better, is the character's responsive. Like I almost feel like I having a double jump is almost like air dashing in this game, where if an enemy is shooting projectiles and you jump at the wrong angle, it's so responsive that you can tap, jump and then tilt downward and do like a backward like dash, sort of like. I know the bottles are supposed to be double jumps per se, but the responsiveness is so good. You can tap the button, you can tap the jump button, and it will give you just a little boost. But if you also incorporate that, for example, like tilting the stick or the direction slightly in the direction you want to move, it'll take priority to move in that direction more than it will jumping. And I like that little dashes like that exist, because especially in hard mode, I feel they're very necessary, because I feel like in hard mode, you do a lot of tanking. Like, it's kind of brutal because it's in your best interest to tank up. Like, trying to be a glass cannon in hard mode is kind of a bad idea. It's still fun. I'm not critiquing hard mode as if it was bad in 1.3.5. It's just that there was an obvious meta there. Like, tank up and then start fighting, but don't try to be a glass cannon, because it's not going to work out for you. You're going to die very fast. I'm feeling like that's possible. I'm feeling like being a glass cannon in 1.4.0 is doable. It might have a high skill ceiling, yes, but I feel like it'll be reasonable if movement is going to consistently be like this. And trust me, this is just still early mode. The only thing my character has equipped as far as movement is concerned are the fledgling wings, the tsunami in a bottle, and the selfish boots. And the movement, just with those three items combined, is absolutely sharp, responsive, and great. And the thing is, it's just like your speed and movement abilities only increase when you go to hard mode. So because my responsiveness is so good now, and I have very basic run-of-the-mill equipment, I'm already certain I know what's waiting for me on the other side as soon as I start hard mode. So yes, like I said, the load times are better, the bug fixes are great, the glitches, as far as I know, most of the ones I know about don't exist anymore. No more crash errors when creating worlds. At least I haven't had that problem. Maybe when I create 10, I might find something. So far, I've only created 2. The weapon and item balance, I'm really loving. I can feel it right away. And, I haven't seen a lot of everything. I've just seen a good amount of early game stuff. I've seen the whip, the jester's arrows, the demonite bows, the spear weapons, the throwing daggers, the throwing stars. I think I already said the summoner whip. I don't know if I'm repeating that. I've seen a good amount to, especially considering weapons that I used to kind of give. I haven't tried the boomerangs. I always felt like the boomerangs were kind of like gimmicky. I haven't tried them now. I did find something cool. So what I will say is, as far as the boomerangs are concerned, the only reason I'm not too worried about them being gimmicky is because I did find a trick in a playthrough in my 1.3.5 version where you can throw a boomerang or some kind of projectile similar to it and swap to another weapon to attack close range enemies whilst the boomerang projectile is still active, so you're not stuck not being unable to defend yourself. So because the controls are so much more responsive now, I know that's a thing. Like, So they were only gimmicky. Okay, so now I can correct myself. They were only gimmicky in 1.3.5, in my opinion, because the controls and responses were so clunky. So you would throw it out, and then you would try to scroll or number swap to your next weapon, and the response was so like inconsistent that like it was best just to rely on, the boomerang to come back. I mean, but there was a system. Like if you were just patient and said, okay, I have to wait until said boomerang travels this distance, then I can switch out. And then, but when you're in the heat of combat, like you don't. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. You don't want to be waiting like, okay, 1,000, 2 1,000. Like you're being attacked by goblins, for goodness sake. Like let me fight. Let me not have to worry about counting reps. So yes, because the controls are so much more responsive, I'm already sure that the boomerang type weapons aren't going to be nearly as gimmicky. So they're going to probably be really fun to use, and I can't wait to try out the jungle chakram, which is one of the weapons that I actually fell in love with, that I thought was absolutely useless at first, except for in extremely close range circumstances, where it could bounce back and forth off of the wall and stuff like that. I always thought it was like, this is really gimmicky. I don't know if I care too much for this weapon, but I kind of fell in love with it. I won't say it's situational. I would say in very specific circumstances, it's excellent, especially with the ability to swap to another weapon. I would just say that the ability to swap being so clunky and unresponsive prior to the updates is the only thing that held it back, and I think made it feel a little gimmicky, in my opinion. But now that things like that are fixed, like I said, I feel like combat is going to be that much more engaging. And then, of course, quality of life changes are always nice. They just make the game a little more fluid and, I guess, a little more enjoyable of an experience. It's just like the little details. They're kind of important. One of the ones that I like is the automatic doors. I used to make my own automatic doors because I didn't like running into a door and then trying to time. Like I said, the controls used to be really clunky, so you would actually click on the door and it was supposed to open it up. But because you didn't click on it like the right angle and all that, like if some piece of furniture was on the other side, like the door would remain shut and you had to kind of like keep messing with it until you got it in just the right, just little irritating stuff like that, doesn't exist anymore. Now you run towards a player door in early game. You don't need to set up some elaborate sensor or something like that. It'll just open right up and you can walk right through it. And then it can be toggled on and off for, those masochists who enjoy running into doors, like it's optional, but I'm personally going to leave it on because, fighting bosses, it makes that much more sense. For example, if you want to get a boss from out of your town, you don't have to struggle with any doors. You can just run straight through your town if you have it set up right and take them out into the wilderness and do battle, like you're supposed to. It's just one of those little annoyances. Now you can fluidly run through your housing, however it is that you have it set up. You don't have to worry about, because I always thought the NPCs had it so easy. They just walk through the doors, and I was like, it's the only one struggling with it. It wasn't, I would say it's a change that I didn't know I wanted until, I actually got it. So I really love that. The better UI. I like personally having the new bars to represent health and mana. And it wasn't that the old version, like I didn't care that it wasn't necessarily the most attractive thing. Like it did its job. It's just that the magic, the mana stars really get in the way sometimes. Mostly for me when I was doing PvP, like I don't know, like I said, the controls were so clunky, and I have this feeling that, and I don't know if this is true, but you can never tell back then because like there were so many problems with the controls, like little stuff, that you just kind of compensated for. But I remember the mana stars, I believe, getting in the way. So if you're trying to like shoot an enemy who's like at a weird angle, they would not only be hidden by the mana stars, but I think if you click the mana stars instead of the actual screen, it doesn't count. So you just don't do anything. I don't know if that was some weird bug, or maybe it's just like what do you call it, like I don't know, maybe it's just something that I'm just thinking happens. I don't know, like so many things were unresponsive. Like perhaps it's not really a thing and it's just in my head, but maybe just clicking in a certain part of the screen in general just doesn't work. I have no idea. All I'm saying is I like that I can see the right side of my screen nice and clear, and the bar takes up just enough real estate that it needs to, and nothing completely unnecessary. So it's like I said, it's another little change, a nice little quality of life thing. Also, like I like being able to change the mini map borders or making it disappear completely. But I do like using it when I'm doing spelunking, so I usually turn the map on. But I don't know, I just haven't felt the need to do that, especially in Journey, because I pretty much have it set up where I like traversing the surface, and I did like traversing the caverns, in early game somewhat, because you didn't until you found a magic mirror, or some recall potions. You were mostly gonna have to go back and forth by foot, and it was cool, but it's one of those things, like especially underground, like it was a little, I don't know, it could be a little annoying. If you got into a nice little groove and maybe you set up some scaffolding and stuff down there, at least in my experience, it was a little bit more tolerable and a little bit more fun, feeling like you're going through a giant jungle gym. So that's I feel like, again, that's the whole create your own fun thing that I was talking about, where I was always overcompensating. Now I go down to a cavern, I find what I want, I try to explore every nook and cranny, and if I don't see anything else, or my inventory gets full, or I feel as though I want to do something different, I just teleport up out of there. You can do that in journey mode now. It's just like, okay, I'm out of here. So I like, little quality of life stuff like that. It's just like, if you don't want to be trekking back and forth underground, you don't have to. I personally like doing on the surface, and I'll rarely teleport back. But the option is there, so I'm glad that it exists. So as I already said before, the levels of immersion in Terraria 1.4.0 are next level. It really sucks you in. The wind, the wind effects, the weather effects, the liveliness of the world, the critters, the sounds that they make during certain times of the day, the overcast of clouds. Sometimes the sky is clear. There's a much clearer sky at night where you can see the stars. Rain is amazing. There's different kinds of rain. There's monsoons, there's light drizzles. There's thunder in the background. The water effects have gotten an update. Like if something heavy falls in it, it splashes now, which is kind of new. The music in this game, oh my goodness, the music. I would say that Terraria's music has always been one of its better features, and it's probably a signature staple at this point, right? If anybody was to tell you, even if they say particularly don't like the game in general, I don't think anyone would ever argue that this game has some of the best chiptune music ever. just some really classic and iconic songs. And now there's remixes, like depending on the type of day. So you have the original track. There were remixes in 1.3.5, and I think maybe some earlier versions. But there's just more. From what I recall in the spoilers, there were supposed to be 11 new music tracks added to the huge collection we have already. But it feels like there's more. I would say there's probably about 14 new tracks, and they're all equally as good as the ones we've already had. So, like, the music just really, draws you in. And when I do PvP mostly, or if I'm exploring underground and it's quite dangerous, sometimes I will turn the music off so I can hear the enemies. But in 1.3.5, having the music off, you could feel it. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, I would turn it on, but I want to focus. Like, I don't want to get ambushed by some powerful enemy and then die within 2 hits. So it was more of a sacrifice for gameplay. Like, I didn't feel like dying, so I would turn the music off. However, yeah, in 1.4.0, I feel like playing with the music off can actually be a thing, because just the ambient sounds of just the things going on around you in nature are just as satisfying and amplified when there's no music. So now it's even better. Like, you can listen to it with music, which is very immersive, especially if you get into a groove. Or you can do like me, and sometimes turn the music off. And I promise you, it's just as immersive. Like, the music, taking away the music does not really hurt like the immersion, with the game at all. Not even a little bit. I would actually argue that without the music, the game is probably a little bit more immersive, but also that the music is so good that I could understand someone not wanting to play without it. So I feel like it's really optional now. But yes, I needed to talk extensively about the music, because the music in this game has always been great. The combat, my goodness, the combat does not take you out of the game. It just draws you in, because the controls are so smooth and so responsive, and you're allowed to just get into the battle, listen to the background, listen to the enemies grunt, and shoot their projectiles, and you can hear it clearly. It's just so much more. It's just so much more impactful now. I can just lose myself in combat and not have to worry about silly menu bugs and delays and clunky controls. So all of that adds to the immersion as well. And item progression, like, I never thought that the rebalancing of the items would contribute so much to, like I said, immersion. And from what I know with spoilers, again, a lot of the hard mode, really cool weapons, like the go-to weapons, have lower level equivalents now. So you can start making a cool, I would say, looking, right, and a very powerful feeling character early game, right? Like, you can feel like your power progression, right? In early game, you don't feel like the very obvious nerf, like, oh, I could be much more powerful than this. Oh, I can't wait till hard mode. It's one of those things, like, now you can actually make a cool feeling and cool looking character much earlier in the game. And even if you like the more classic weapons like me, like, combat is so responsive. I don't feel like I need, like, that's the thing, like, the urgency to get the most broken weapon I could possibly get my hands on just wasn't there anymore, because just, even with the regular standard weapons. It just feels good to fight with them now. I don't feel the urgency of like, oh, I can't wait to get rid of this or that weapon so I can get, something stronger. Like I like just naturally progressing and just experimenting with the weapons because they're not bad anymore now. Like they serve their purpose, and they serve their purpose pretty well because, like I said, combat's, maybe it's just the fact that combat is smoother, but I also have to attribute the fact that the weapons feel much more balanced. So when you're doing this nice fluid combat, your weapons also appropriately feel like they're scaling. So even if it's just by that little bit, I can, like what I'm saying, it's easier to feel things in this game. It's not just about, it's almost like it coincides with how it feels to play, right? With its sharpness and clarity, and how it feels to progress. They're almost kind of intertwined. And so when I say feel, I mean it on two levels. The way it feels, like control-wise, like the control you have over combat with your character, and the feeling that you get, internally by your progression. It just feels right. Like, I don't know, like I pick up a weapon and I actually give it a go now. I don't think to myself, oh, this thing, and to just kind of be like, well, let's research it and then never look at it again. I'm more willing to try different things now, so I love it. And then one of the things I also enjoy is that it seems as though Terraria is not so stingy with useful items anymore, right? Whilst playing 1.4.0, I noticed a really huge difference when it comes to exploring, right? Typically when I explore in this game, usually in 1.3.5 and previous versions, I'll always come to a really annoying situation and be like, man, I really wish I had this or that item, because I don't feel like dealing with this current situation. And the thing is like usually those items were locked behind the enemies there, and maybe you got the item that made things a little bit more tolerable, or maybe you didn't. And if you did, you were like, oh, thank goodness. But I don't think it was as satisfying as it could have been where you come prepared, Now it feels like even if you don't find the item, or get the thing or the materials, right? There's always another way to compensate for that. And that's why I like the new NPCs. I like the new researching system, because now you can go to tough areas, especially for me. You can crank that difficulty up just a little higher because now your character's prepared. And then I really feel like you can experience the game the way it should have been for a very long time. And a lot of really annoying areas, aside from all of the updates, are just fun to play now. Like, it's just so fun to go to a really hazardous and usually dangerous situation. And, it's still hazardous and dangerous, but not for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? Now you're prepared. For example, like now you can see, right? Now you can use your shine potions early, right? Now you can use your spelunking potions. Now you can use your metal detectors early. You can find the things that you're looking for. Like, it's not being stingy, like, oh, you gotta do this and that first. It's just like, hey, if you get it, you get it. We're not gonna try to keep it from you. We're not gonna make everything a 1% drop. Like, why are you making things so difficult to get? Like, it helps, make the game more engaging. Like, allow me to be prepared for these situations. Like, why am I always falling into 40 feet of water, with no flippers or no gills potions? Like, why am I always drowning? Like, let me, if you're gonna plunge me into darkness, at least let me be able to swim. Don't make me not be able to see, not be able to use torches, and not be able to swim. And then my only option is to teleport out. I wanted to keep exploring. It feels like the game is just like, you know what? We're sorry. We don't know why we did that to you. If you want to explore, here, explore. Here's the items. Have fun. Swim, in the 40 feet of water you just accidentally fought in. Fight some, nasty piranhas, with your nice spear weapon. And then just have a good time. And then falling into that 40-foot pit of water becomes less of an annoyance. And oh my goodness, I'm about to die, or oh, now I got to go back to the surface. It becomes part of the experience now. Now you're exploring. Now that usually annoying situation became part of the exciting adventure, because now you get to, okay, well, how do I get out of here? You swim back to the top, and then you keep exploring. I feel like that's what it always should have been, and this just goes for the tweaks. Like, this isn't even accounting for, like I said, the balance changes. Just like the things that already existed in this game have been given the love and attention they deserve, and the game is just now more like, yes, just explore. Like, we don't want it, like, okay, we had our fun trying to kill you all the time, because one of the things that I didn't like was getting an item and thinking to myself, oh, this would have been very useful, before I killed this or that boss. Now I'm not even gonna go back down there. So thanks for giving this to me now. I always felt that in this game. Like, I'll give you a perfect example aside from just exploring caves and falling into 40 feet of water. For example, fighting one of the bosses, whose name is Queen Bee. I always felt it would be really cool to counter her little minions that she has by summoning your own minion and then having that minion deal with those little minions while you deal with the actual boss. But guess what? That option is locked behind killing Queen Bee. So before you get to actually enjoy fighting Queen Bee or being clever or using your tools, you have to kill her first, and then if you want to fight her again, then you get to do the cool stuff. It's just like, that is a perfect example of what I mean with Terraria hiding everything behind some kind of difficulty spike, or hard mode. It's just like, give me the tools, please. Like, then I'll engage the game in more difficult ways. Like, don't give me artificial difficulty. Let me be prepared. Let me enjoy the fight, and if I decide to take it to the next level, like for example master mode, I can do that. And now that's what we have. So yes, thank you so much, developers. Like, this is one of the first games where I feel like the developers love the game just as much as the fan base, and the 1.4.0 updates show just that. So like I said, I love all of this, and I'm going to keep saying that is why I believe this game is a solid 14 out of 10. But being humble, I'll go with 12 out of 10. That's fine. 2 points down, that's fine. But more content is coming. See, that's the thing. There's more content coming. So what then? Does it still stay 12 out of 10, or can I finally give it a 14? So now we're finally coming to an end. Let's bring this to a closing, right? Let's rate Terraria 1.4.02 in its current state, okay? With everything I discussed. But this time, let's be reasonable, right? Let's say that 12 out of 10 or 14 out of 10 is ridiculous, okay? Let's give this game a score, all right? So we talked about gameplay. Gameplay has been dramatically improved, from control responsiveness to the gameplay loop to gameplay immersion to just overall, just tweaks and adjustments to convenience, to quality of life, to how the menus are respond, to the clarity of item descriptions, to tips and tricks on how to play, to NPCs being more helpful, to point the player in the right direction, to useful items not being locked behind difficulty spikes or hard mode, or it's just like the game allows you to feel clever, it allows you to prepare, it allows you to adjust things on the fly. You can tweak your gameplay, you can adjust the difficulty on the fly. If you want it to be nighttime all the time, in journey mode you can do that. If you want it to be day all the time, in journey mode you can do that. If you want it to be raining all the time, in journey mode you can do that. If you're a masochist who likes doing invasions like the Pumpkin Moon, and you don't want Wave 12 to ever stop, and you want to just keep killing and killing monsters, you can do that. Your gameplay is customizable in the same way that your UI is customizable, your character's appearance is customizable. Like, it's just as tweakable as those other things. So I am very comfortable with giving the gameplay rating of Terraria 1.4.2 in its current state a solid 10 out of 10. Let's talk about the graphics and visuals. If you want to take points away from this game for being two-dimensional and sprite-based, that's fine. But if we're being honest, with the color palette, the lighting, the shaders, the improvements to color variations in the 1.4.02 update, the different tree variants, this game's beautiful. The wind effects, like, even if you don't like 2D graphics, like, at most you could give this a 9 if you're being like honest, but I believe an honest opinion is probably like a 9.5. But this is my review, and the visuals in this game just got a complete overhaul, and I'm not gonna pretend I don't see it. I always thought this game was kind of pretty, but it lacked in certain areas. You could tell that some armors or weapons were created in this game's infancy because they were easily left behind by such upgrades as like the Dungeon Defenders crossover materials or pets or armors. You could tell like the flapping of certain developer wings and old ones army wings compared to the wings in 1.3.5 and previous versions of the game. You could tell the difference. So if somebody was to give the graphics a low score, I could understand that. But now everything's on par, at least from what I've seen. Everything got a makeover. So if I'm gonna be honest and give this game a solid rating on its graphics alone and the visuals, the color palettes, the lighting, like the environmental effects, the splashing of the water, I'm very comfortable giving it also a 10 out of 10. Let's talk about the controls and the new UI. It's just like the way you can customize your controls now, and the way that hybrid setups, for example, like someone who plays in a very unique way like me, who has a controller, keyboard, and mouse hybrid setup, is flawlessly functional. Everything got an overhaul. The UI can be adjusted, as you see. You can scale it up. You can scale it down. Even when you're looking at the screen, you can zoom in on your character if you want a more intimate feel, as if like you want to see something up close in the environment. You can scale all the way out. For example, if you're a sniper or a ranger and you want to see as much area as you possibly can, you can customize all of those things. You can customize your buttons, you can customize your hotkeys, you can customize just about anything to do with the controls. Like, sky's the limit. So, and then of course it's not as clunky. Well, I won't even say as clunky. It's not clunky anymore. Combat in this game controls like a frickin' fighting game. It's that sharp and that precise. I am very comfortable with giving the controls and the new UI a solid 10 out of 10. No problem. Let's talk about the music. My goodness, the music. Music in Terraria, even before the updates, was always great. It was iconic. You can ask anyone. I'm sure that is a unanimous, we all unanimously agree that this game has some of the best chiptune music in gaming. and it was already excellent before. Now we have 11 plus new music tracks, more on the way. You know, how can you not give the music a solid 10 out of 10? It's so atmospheric, and even without the music, let's just talk about the sound quality. You can turn the music off, the sounds of nature, of the wind effects are so clear and crisp, and it just like so distinctive. So the music and sound, I'm very comfortable again giving that a solid rating of 10 out of 10. Let's talk about player customization. Again, you can customize your UI, you can customize your gameplay experience with journey mode, you can customize the difficulty spike, you can customize how many enemies spawn, you can customize whether your character takes a lot of damage, you can customize whether your character takes very little damage. You can customize your accessories setup, you can customize the tools that you use, like you can customize your vanities, you can decide which items are visible, which aren't. This is just with 1.3.5. Now we have more stuff, right? And we're getting even more dies, right? And we're getting even more player vanity sets, right? So even if you could say, oh, this, I've seen games with more customization, this game lets you customize your adventure mode. How many games do you know that allow you to customize your adventuring experience without mods? I mean, I've seen difficulty sliders, and this is a person who's played a lot of RPGs and has played a lot of sandboxes. Like, you can adjust the difficulty slider, yes. Even in a game like Skyrim, you know, you can adjust the difficulty on the fly. I mean, that's cool, but you can't change the weather whenever you want unless you use console commands. You know, you can't change the amount of enemies that spawn, again, unless you use console commands. But all those things, I would argue, break immersion. You can do it in Terraria in real time. I even have gameplay footage of myself fighting a goblin army, feeling as though, you know, it was a bit kind of on the annoying side because I was using the wrong weapon. But I decided, you know what, let's get rid of them. And the controls are so sharp that when I started making the smart plays, I got totally immersed, because then it was just about me being clever and defeating tough enemies. And then I decided on the fly, I was like, you know what? This is a bit too easy. Let's crank the difficulty up a few hairs on the fly. And it just felt so organic and natural. I didn't have to pause the game and fiddle with a bunch of console commands and then not put the backslash in the right spot and all that. No, it's just part of the natural flow of the game. You can adjust the difficulty on the fly just as much. You can adjust how zoomed in the camera is on your character, or just how scaled the UI is, or whether it is that you want to use an axe, or you want to use a sword, or you want to use shurikens, or you want to use your pickaxe, I don't know, to fight for some reason. If you want to summon your Finch staff, summon, you know, to help fight with you. If you want to use, I don't know, like a spear, like, it's all integrated into the same experience. You can make those adjustments just like you can with your weapons, your armor, and your items on the fly. And I can't think of another game that allows you to do that. So when you talk about player customization, there's no way, in all honesty, you can give less than a perfect 10 out of 10 score. This game allows you to customize things that are not typically adjustable in other games. Let's talk about fun factor. Okay, so this is where it gets really, really subjective, right? I'm comfortable giving the game a solid 10 out of 10 because I wasn't comfortable with rating it before, because I knew it had its problems, and to me it was a very flawed classic. And I could fully understand, you know, in hindsight, why it is that this game isn't for everyone. You know, I couldn't understand it at first because, like I said, I came into the game in a very unique way. I got to do all of the fun stuff immediately. I got to do invasions. I got to get some of the powerful items. I came into the game and I said, you know what? I want to be a mage. I had no idea what I was in for. I didn't even know if the game had magic. That's just how I approach games. I come in and I say, this is what I want to do. If the game allows me to do it, I'll typically stick around for a while, you know? And if the game keeps catering to my creativity and inspires me, I'll keep playing it. And Terraria was doing that for me, but I was in a very privileged position because a community was already set up around this game when I got here, and they embraced me, you know, wholeheartedly. Everybody probably won't have that experience. And it's like I said before, I'm not going to give Terraria a pass. A lot of things in its early development were locked behind outsider knowledge. Like you had to be tech savvy. You had to know how to mess with game files. You had to know how to create servers. You had to use third-party software to do multiplayer effectively. You had to just know how to approach this game. If somebody from the middle of nowhere who doesn't know anything about computers, who doesn't know, you know, anything about third-party software, who doesn't know, you know, anything about sandbox games like this, it's like the game was heavily lacking. So I couldn't be surprised if this game wasn't for everyone, because it's really tough to get into if you don't know what you're doing. There's just a lot here to take in. Again, this game is arguably 9 years of content. So asking a person who's fresh to come in without the help of a guide or a friend or a wiki is quite a lot. And if they leave within like the first hour saying, oh, well, this is just a Minecraft clone and it's in 2D, I'd rather just play Minecraft, they'd be extremely wrong, yes. But can you blame them though? Probably not. However, here's the thing. 1.4.02, as it is, changes all that. The game opens up, like I said, from the very beginning. They don't hide anything from you this time. The NPCs will give you advice. They'll give you suggestions on what it is you should be doing when the game is loading. The items have more clear and direct descriptions about what it is they do. The crafting materials you need are very visual, and they're not hiding in the bottom somewhere because you have to highlight it a certain way. Everything is clear to see, and even if you come into this game blind with no prior experience with any other game similar, you'll be just fine. And the game is, like I said, hard mode is when the game really opens up. Not just with the difficulty spike, I mean just with what the game throws at you. They just throw everything at you. Here, have this and that. And you get to decide what you want to use, right? Early game wasn't like that. And what I will say is that early game now, in 1.4.02 as it stands, is as open as hard mode was from what I've seen in 1.3.5. So now, because I always thought hard mode was when the game really opens up and it really starts to get fun, I'm very comfortable with giving this game a final rating without hesitation, with its fun factor of a solid 10 out of 10. Now let's talk about replay value. I would say, do I really need to say it? Do I really need to say it? I just explained my experience where I'm having fun just doing research and exploring. That might take a while because, as I said, I'm still in early game and there's hard mode waiting for me, right? Which I already thought was fun, to do even more research, right? Because that's my new favorite thing. And from what I know, there were over 800 to 1,000 new items added. So that's a lot more research I got to do. And as you can see, I'm building, I'm still building our home base. I'm still developing my character. I'm loving combat because it's so precise and it feels like playing a fighting game. And I can even go into hard mode as a glass cannon now. It seems like a thing that you can do. I'm still focused on that. So I still want to refine combat. I still want to do my research. And I still want to explore. And then I'm thinking the next logical step is I want to start taking a look at the bestiary, or the bestiary, I'm sorry, and start putting, some of the stories together, because another thing I like about this game is the lore. So now there's more lore spread all over the world for me to discover each and every time I kill enemies, which I actually enjoy doing. But it's crazy because it was my favorite thing at one time. Now it's an afterthought. It's a product of every other great thing. And it's just as enjoyable, which is why I say the grind in this game has basically just been removed. Everything just feels so fluid. It feels so connected. Everything just flows together so well. The combat complements the gameplay, which the controls complement the combat, to which the controls also complement movement, to which movement translates into traversing the world, which is very complex because it has caves and different surfaces and biomes, and the biomes do different things to you depending on how it is that you play. But you have the items and things to actually counteract that, because the game doesn't hide preparation behind difficulty spikes. You can be prepared as soon or as early as you desire to be prepared, and situations that are usually considered annoying and instant death, or the only answer is to recall back to the surface, are now part of the adventure. The replay value is a solid 10 out of 10, and I'll tell you why. I just described to you my current gameplay loop, right? I never talked about Terraria Golf once, which is still waiting on me, and I can't wait to do that. I still haven't talked about, what happens when I decide to build another major city or another structure, because there's new food items. I can make more custom shops. I can make bakeries. This is just me being creative. I'm giving you examples of how it is that I typically play this game. There's more vanity sets. I can go exploring to try to find all of the vanity sets. And because I love combat so much, it won't be a grind. It'll be just me doing what I enjoy. Gotta catch them all with the bestiary. Gotta catch them all with the research system. Gotta catch them all with the new armors and weapons. Gotta catch them all with the new pets and trophies. Gotta catch them all with the new achievements that are coming soon. Gotta catch them all with all of the new music boxes that are going to be coming soon. Gotta catch them all with the things that were already in the game, but you can only get seasonally. It's just one of those things where the gameplay loop, if I'm describing it to you effectively, just keeps on going. Because like I said, Terraria Golf, if I'm just going to focus on that for a moment, is its own separate thing. It has its own mechanics. There's courses made for it already. I'm going to, of course, build my own, but still, there's a nice, lovely course that's already been made waiting for me to get some practice to see how it is that Terraria Golf really works. And then there's the social aspects that I already enjoyed before the update that are waiting for me if and ever I get bored of the gameplay loop that I'm doing now. But as you can see, I never got bored of Terraria. I just didn't like certain aspects of it as much as I liked others. So if you want to talk about Terraria hard mode, I can play that, forever. I can do invasions. You can ask anybody that knows me. I love me some pumpkin moon invasions and pirate invasions and things like that, right? But my favorite thing at a certain point started becoming the social aspects, and that's been improved, right? Because now you can actually lay your food items on the table, right? You don't have to do the pretending like let's put this bowl down here that's only a certain color and let's add some paint so that it matches. No, you don't have to over. I'm speaking for myself. I'm sorry. I have to make it clear when I'm speaking for myself. I personally don't have to overcompensate for the fact that the game just didn't have certain little details at it, right? And I feel like the relationship that I had with Terraria was such a good one that it would almost feel like being ungrateful to complain about a game that was already giving me more than most games I've ever played in my entire life. So complaining about little nitpicky stuff, I feel at the time I felt was being a little ungrateful, right? But I can't deny that I'm glad that these little things are here now. And to be honest, now that they're here, I can't see myself living without them. So now we've talked at length, right, for a ridiculous amount of time about all of the things that 1.4.02 in its current state provides for me, the player, for you, the player, for us, the player base, right? Which is why I believe I could argue, reasonably, with no fanboyism, no bias, that the game is a 10 out of 10. And if you want to be hardcore and you want to be extra nitpicky and stuff like that, which I don't see how you can, but let's just say that there is something you can nitpick. At most, the game is a 9.8, so I mean it's pretty much a 10 when you round it off, right? But it gets even deeper. Let's talk about what the game doesn't just spoon feed you, right? Let's talk about what you can do with what the game provides outside of all of the cool stuff, outside of the gameplay, outside of the graphics, outside of the controls, outside of the music, outside of a player customization, which it kind of integrates into, but that's a separate thing. Let's make it a separate thing. Okay, Terraria is already a 9.8, but I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. But let's give it a 9.8, right? Let's be hardcore. Let's be spicy. Let's do a hot take and say, oh, the game is pretty good, but it's not quite a 10. It's a 9. It's a 9.8 out of 10, right? Let's do that. Let's be spicy. Huh, but wait. There's more. So outside of what the game provides you, of course, you can build grand structures, right? And you can build your own mini games. Now, this is where a person like me comes into play who's a creative. With all of the freedom Terraria allows, I can build my own golf courses once I understand how the mechanics works, right? Just like I build adventure maps, I can build my very own special golf course and share it with my friends and all that kind of social stuff. So now we're getting into the social stuff that I started to enjoy, right? So we can play some Terraria golf on custom courses that I made, or we can play on the course that comes with the game. We can do either or, right? But then there's also side activity type mini game objects, right? But I'm just gonna call them mini game devices, right? Let's be specific. Let's not fanboy anymore. So there's a Terraria football, and there's an upgrade to the Terraria beach ball. Now it's an American version, football americano, the American version of football, that mini game device, right? And then a beach ball. Now I've already created several mini games in Terraria. I've created Terraria volleyball. I've created Terraria boulder ball, which is like a basketball game, and I've created Terraria paintball, and several others that I can't think on the top of my head. But yes, I've made. Oh yeah, it was a shooting gallery game that I'm still working on. But I pretty much have the mechanics down. It's just the building it to make it entertaining type thing. So I already have my own mini games, and those items have been improved to be more interactable with the world. So now you can do your own football mini games socially, right? I already have Boulder Ball waiting on me, right? I already have the improved beach ball waiting on me to play some Terraria volleyball for that mini game, right? I mean, we already have, what is it? Golf, okay? We have paintball. These are things I'm gonna provide. If you're wondering, yes, I'm gonna provide maps. So it's part of the game now. If you know about me and you know about my channel, it counts because I create maps like this. So yes, there's gonna be Terraria paintball. There's gonna be Terraria football Americano. There's gonna be golf, which they already have their own mechanics for, right? There's Boulder Ball, right? And aside from all that, let's say that you don't care about none of the social aspects of the game, right? Let's pretend I didn't care, right? Let's say I do all the things and I beat the game and oh, it's too easy. There's still master mode waiting for me. What I'm saying is the replay value in this game, like I said, let's be spicy. Let's say it only adds 1 point. 1 point, okay. Even metagame, you know, after the game, after you understand everything, you can now create your own fun still. Like, that hasn't gone anywhere. You don't have to overcompensate now, right? And I'm talking about me when I say you, right? No more overcompensating. The game gives you everything you need to be entertained, but let's say that you're easily bored and that's not enough, right? The metagame still provides more content. If you're creative enough, even if you're not creative enough, if you follow, like I said, someone like my channel, we make stuff. So you can have luxury homes if you want. If you're bored with everything else, you can have mini games waiting for you. If you're bored of everything else, I mean, there's still the Dungeon Defenders content where you can do tower defense. You can do invasions. And if that's still not enough, oh, it's too easy. This is boring, right? Like I said, master mode is still waiting for you. So when I talk about replay value, this is a side. Remember, we already gave it a score, right? We scored Terraria to be spicy, right? I want to make it sure that I'm show you that I'm not being a fanboy, right? Let's be spicy. You know, let's be that one reviewer who you just can't satisfy, right? And let's give Terraria, I don't want to quite give it a 10. Let's give it a 9.8, out of 10, right? Well, it gets an extra point for the metagame. Users and fans of this game who create content, that's actually part of the game too. It's the open book creativity that the game allows for the fans to create their own fun, even if they're not satisfied with what they already have, which is something I was already doing. So that counts too. So now you have a spicy 9.8 rating with 1 point remaining for what it is that you can do aside from what the game provides. This is your own creativity. There goes your 1 point. Now the game is now a 10. You can't escape it is what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is basically me giving it a reasonable 10 out of 10. I'm talking about all this extra content and replay value that still exists and the things that are still coming. Even if we were to leave everything above and say, okay, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Now that the game's a 10, in my opinion, right? We have more content coming and we have the metagame. Those are 2 more points. Is it really unreasonable for me to say that I truly believe that Terraria is a 12 out of 10 game, right? I say 14 out of 10, but let's say 12. I believe that sounds a little bit more reasonable now, doesn't it? Alright, so as promised, I want to cover the very last thing on the list of things to discuss, a visual representation of my expectation versus reality with 1.4.0. So here is a copy of the tier list that I made in the Terraria Discord Basically with a very bold claim of the features that I figured that I would love the most, and the rest were kind of just okay, right? Now this tier list has changed dramatically. So I figured in real time we could look at again my expectations versus like reality. What I wanted, what I thought I wanted, and what I actually got, right? So one of the things that's absolute blasphemy on this list is the zoologist NPC being in the 8th spot. So we're gonna fix that in real time. I moved her up. She's at least top 5, so I definitely moved her up. Okay, so the number one thing that I love is journey mode. Okay, journey mode is the feature that I never knew that I wanted the most out of all of the things listed here. It's just so much more free. It feels so much more freeing, and again, I described it at length, so I'm not going to do it again here, but journey mode is definitely number one. So I'm changing it in real time. The bestiary I'm not really using, so I'm not going to rate, but I'm just going to, for at most, do my top 5, right? So journey mode's the first, right? So let's see what else we got. I will say that dirt bombs are actually pretty cool. I have them as low tier, but I don't think they're probably gonna be on my top 5. But I don't see it here, so let's put adventuring. Okay, so exploring. Okay, exploring the new the new map updates. There we go. To be more specific. Okay, so that's my second favorite thing to do. And another thing I have on that I don't have on there is the research. All right, item research. Yeah, item researching is my third favorite thing. Researching items, yes. So that's not even on there, which means that it was below 23. It was below dirt bombs. But that's absolutely one of my favorite things is doing research in 1.4.0. Like I don't know, it's so simple, but it gives, like I said, it gives every single piece of dirt, every piece of algae, every piece of furniture value. Even if you plan to never use it, it's just good to have for the occasion that you do. And if you just say, you know what, this item I never use would be perfect here, you can just pop it right out of your inventory because you researched it. So I absolutely love that. And then let's see. Alright, so I have the desert biome makeover. Okay, so it was actually number 10. So I'm gonna say that number 10 is associated with exploring. So the new desert biome makeover is great. I'll include that with exploring, so that's definitely number 2. So that went from 10 to 2. And then journey mode I had originally at number 11. So that needs to be fixed, okay? Researching items wasn't even on there. So shame on me. The zoologist being number 8, she moved up to number 5, okay? So let's see, number 4. What is my other favorite thing? So I have journey mode, just playing on it, period. Exploring the new map updates, which was originally number 10. Researching items, which wasn't even on there. What's my, oh, combat. Yes, the new combat mechanics. Yes, the new combat mechanics, which I don't even think is on here. So let's look. So I have it as 3 new bosses. Okay, so I'm gonna, yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just consider the 3 new bosses as the same thing. Let me make sure. So I have the new graveyard biome. I guess that's also adventuring, but I don't know. I'll leave it there for now. But yes, the new bosses. So I'm going to consider that combat. So they used to be number 13. Yes, the new bosses are definitely going to be my 4th favorite thing, because I've already done 2 boss fights and they were excellent. So yeah, because the combat, the controls are just so much more fluid, so much better. Again, fighting bosses or just fighting in this game period feels like an actual action game, like a fighting game. Like, it's so sharp, it's so precise. You know, you can adjust it. Like, it's just all of the little nuances and extra spice that you can add. So let's go over my original folly. So of course I have the bestiary at number 1, which I'm not even using. It might be cool. Not quite something I want to do. Terraria Golf, I know that's on there. That's going to be waiting for me later, but I haven't touched it yet because I'm just having just way too much fun just exploring. But let's see. Yes, I have golf as number 4, and it's not even in my top 4 anymore. The zoologist NPC jumped over, and it's just the items that she has. The zoologist NPC has the whip, which is cool. I'm not using it just yet, but it was definitely cool. She has the a mount, which is really cool. Like, oh, I went to the jungle in a monsoon with that mount and landed into a pool of water, and it was beautiful. Like, I'm not going to spoil the other cool things that mount can do, but yes, she gives you pet licenses, and now I have 2 town NPC pets. So, I mean, I know that's more of a social aspect. It doesn't do anything really, as far as I know. Like, it doesn't have any real function other than just, social, or I would say the little extra cherry on top, the stuff you can just do, just having the stuff. So yeah, I like having NPC pets. Like, it makes, I don't know, it's just, it improves the experience. It makes the homestead feel a little bit more personal, and I'm invested in it more, and I want to protect the town more. Like, I remember there was a time when a boss attacked. I didn't care if the NPCs died or not. Like, I mean, I did because it would be inconvenient, but I actually care now. Like, I want to protect home. I have pets now. Like, I don't know. It's just, the changes immerse me so much that now I actually care. And I feel like that's invaluable. 1.4.0, just alone with the amount of investment and immersion it provides, on top of everything else that I've said, just makes this game so much better. So it went from being, a flawed classic to just a plain classic, just a plain masterpiece. That's it. Terraria is a masterpiece. It can't be, I don't even think it can be argued anymore. It's just a straight up masterpiece. It is officially now the best game in my library. And I would say the only contenders that I'm considering now aren't games that aren't even out yet. And one of them is Cyberpunk 2077. It might be a contender for my favorite game, but for now, out of all the games I have in my library, which includes Skyrim, Fallout, Dark Souls series, those are the ones that I can just think about that I know that I love. Some of my favorite fighting games, Skullgirls. Yeah, it's my favorite game now. So, yes, that has been my complete review, and it was originally 4 hours. So don't try to hit me with the clickbait thing. I reduced the time purposely because at a certain point I felt like some things just didn't need to be said, and then I was spoiling a lot. Like, I want this to be as spoiler free as possible, but I did have to mention some things to emphasize my point. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful time. So go out there and play some Terraria 1.4. Like, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't. All right. Bye.